Chapter 2352. A few days later, the Holy Universe Origin appeared in Murong Yu's line of sight again. Just like when he lured the ice controller, he was being chased by a controller. Moreover, the power of the Great Path surged all over this controller's body. Wherever it passed, the void was shattered or even annihilated by his power of the Great Path. Moreover, what made Murong Yu speechless was that the little controller lured by the Holy Universe Origin was actually the fire controller. There was a saying that ice and fire were incompatible. Wasn't the Holy Universe Origin a joke? It was true that Murong Yu wanted to refine more great paths. However, he didn't say that the second one to be refined was the fire controller. He didn't even know if his physical body could withstand the two great paths of ice and fire. It was still a question whether the two great paths of ice and fire could coexist in his body. However, since the Holy Universe Origin had lured the fire controller here, Murong Yu naturally wouldn't ignore it. Anyway, he had to kill and refine it. Just like the ice controller, the Holy Universe Origin lured the fire controller past Murong Yu's feet. However, the fire controller was much more cautious than the ice controller. Although he was chasing after the Holy Universe Origin, he rippled out the power of the Great Path to protect himself. However, the current Murong Yu was no longer the Murong Yu who had killed the ice controller. Previously, he didn't have the power of the Great Path, so he wasn't a match for the little controller who had the power of the Great Path. However, he also had the complete power of the Great Path now, so he could compete with the little controller. The power of a 12th level Dao ancestor had been raised to the extreme by Murong Yu. At the same time, the power of the Great Path instantly surged to the limit. Kill! Murong Yu roared and locked onto the fire controller. All kinds of power poured out instantly, strangling fiercely. The moment Murong Yu attacked, the fire controller had already reacted. Although the little controller wasn't a real controller, their reaction speed was far above that of a 9th level Dao ancestor. Immediately, the fire controller's grand Dao energy surged and condensed on his fists. Then, he fiercely threw a punch in Murong Yu's direction. Boom! The power of the Great Path from both sides collided fiercely, and then an earth-shattering sound was heard. A terrifying shockwave instantly swept out in all directions. Instantly, the origin space of the sacred universe began to be annihilated. Even though the origin space of the sacred universe was extremely sturdy, it couldn't withstand the power of the two great Daos. If it weren't for the fact that the Saint Universe Origin had left long ago, it would have been destroyed. Although it wouldn't be completely destroyed, it would definitely be smashed into countless pieces. The powers of the Great Ways collided. But as the masters of the two powers of the Great Ways, they stood where they were without moving. Their great Dao powers were almost the same, so it was extremely difficult for controllers to kill each other. However, Murong Yu didn't just possess the power of the great Dao. His strength was also as high as a 12th level Dao ancestor. Following the power of the Great Path of Ice, the terrifying power quickly bombarded the fire controller's body. Suddenly, the fire controller was caught off guard. After a miserable scream, the fire controller was sent flying. During this process, Murong Yu could clearly see that his body had begun to rupture. Deep, bone-deep wounds had appeared on his body. They were a ghastly sight. The fire controller even spat out blood from his mouth. What's going on? Ice controller, why is your strength so strong? Why can you injure me? The fire controller was extremely angry, and he roared and questioned Murong Yu. In fact, he wanted to know why Murong Yu could injure him so easily. Murong Yu didn't speak. He took a step forward and teleported near the fire controller. The power of the Great Path and cultivation power erupted again, and it was extremely turbulent as it suppressed the fire controller. The fire controller was furious and roared again and again. His figure flickered as he quickly retreated backward. At the same time, the power of the Great Path surged and crashed toward Murong Yu. Murong Yu's face was cold as he attacked crazily. Boom! 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 The facts told the fire controller that the controller wasn't invincible. At least the little controller wasn't. Under the situation where the power of the Great Path was the same, Yu had an absolute advantage because his power of the Great Path was 2 levels higher than his. With every bombardment, the fire controller's physical body quickly collapsed. Between the two of them, the fire controller couldn't resist Yu's attack at all. Buddhist incantation of 9 words. When Yu summoned the immemorial Great Emperor again, the fire controller finally couldn't resist anymore. His fleshly body was directly shattered. Saint Soul Slash. Although the Saint Soul Slash was a relatively low-level combat skill, after Yu used it, the soul-killing power was extremely terrifying. The fire controller didn't have time to react at all, and his soul had already been slashed by the Saint's Soul Slash. Suddenly, more than half of his soul was destroyed. Moreover, how could Yu only use the Saint's Soul Slash once? After a few consecutive times, the fire controller finally couldn't resist anymore. After a miserable shriek, his soul was destroyed. The fire Great Path immediately leaped out of his body and rushed into the distance, trying to escape. However, Yu worked so hard to refine the fire Great Path, so how could he let it escape? He reached out his hand and grabbed the fire Great Path in his hand. As he controlled the ice Great Path, Yu was already familiar with the power of the Great Path. Therefore, it was easy to control the fire Great Path. Of course, it wasn't so easy to refine the fire Great Path and let the 2 great paths coexist in the body. The sacred universe origin appeared again. Yu, with your current strength, you're more than capable of killing the Little Master. If you control the fire Great Path, it won't be difficult to kill the little controller directly. Yu nodded. After this battle, he once again realized how important it was to have powerful strength. If he didn't surpass the fire controller's strength of 2 Dao ancestors, how could he kill the other party so quickly? However, if he could refine 2 types of Great Path powers, his Great Path powers would be superior to any of the lesser controllers. At that time, the gap between those little controllers and him will be further widened. However, compared to the 8 little controllers, the current Yu still had a huge gap. This not only reminded Yu of Great Void. At that time, Great Void didn't have a little controller. How terrifying was his strength to be able to kill the original destruction controller at the Dao Ancestor realm. 13th Dao Ancestor? Yu shook his head. After controlling the Ice Great Path, Yu realized how terrifying the strength of a little controller was. Yu felt that he had to at least have the strength of an 18th Dao Ancestor to be able to match a real little controller. And if he wanted to kill, he was afraid that it would be even higher. How terrifying was the strength of an 18th Dao Ancestor? How did Great Void do it? Yu could feel that if he had enough resources, his realm would continue to improve. It wasn't impossible for him to eventually reach the 18th Dao Ancestor or even higher. But that would definitely take an extremely long time. That was where the problem came from. Why was Great Void so powerful that he was exterminated by the chaotic race? Could it be that those little controllers took action and exterminated the chaotic race? Otherwise, others wouldn't be a match for Great Void at all. Only after meeting Great Void or other little controllers would he know the real answer to this question. Now, Yu wasn't qualified to meet them. Or rather, if he met them now, it wouldn't be good. After all, the current strength gap between Yu and the 8 little controllers was too big. First, refine the Fire Great Path. Yu instructed the Sacred Universe Origin not to go out and cause trouble recently, and then entered the Hichu Luo Shu, because he had refined the Ice Great Path once. Therefore, Yu was a little familiar with refining the Fire Great Path. It was easy to refine the Fire Great Path. However, when the Fire Great Path entered his body, everything wasn't so good. Boom! This was the first time the 2 Grand Daos had come into contact with each other. The result was that Yu's body was directly torn apart. With his current strength, his physical body was already quite strong. Even if he suffered an attack from the power of Great Path once, it wouldn't burst open. First, when the power of 2 Great Paths collided in his body, his physical body couldn't withstand it at all. Not only was water and fire incompatible, but so was ice and fire. Murong Yu rolled his eyes and began to try to merge the two great paths in his body. Because among the 3,000 great paths, there were many great paths that were two extremes. Now, he couldn't merge just two great paths, let alone merging 3,000 great paths in the future. Why can't two great paths coexist in one body? They could all exist in a single chaos. Murong Yu pondered in his heart. How can they not interfere with each other within the chaos? Just like this heaven and earth, one sky and one earth, two extremes that were originally two completely different existences. However, the combination of the two forms heaven and earth, the world and the universe. Then, can the power of two great paths complement each other in the body and become an existence like heaven and earth? Murong Yu pondered deeply. Moreover, my physical body is a chaotic celestial body, the same as the endless chaos. I am the endless chaos, and there are universes in my body. These great paths should be able to coexist in my body. Yes, I know. Although they are two extremes, as long as they don't merge into one, they can mind their own business. Moreover, all great paths are evolved from the endless chaos. I am the endless chaos, and I am the controller of the chaos. Ice and fire great paths. Why don't you merge them into my body? What are you waiting for? Murong Yu suddenly roared. Suddenly, a mysterious force exploded in Murong Yu's body and swept through the ice and fire great paths. Under the influence of this force, the ice and fire great paths immediately calmed down like a docile lamb. At the same time, they merged into Murong Yu's body and minded their own business. As for the mysterious force, Murong Yu didn't know how it appeared. After shocking the ice and fire great paths, it disappeared without a trace. Chapter 2353. He had mastered the great Tao of ice and fire. Now, Murong Yu was equivalent to the combination of an ice controller and a fire controller. The two great Tao powers of ice and fire were perfectly compatible in Murong Yu's body. They minded their own business. However, as long as Murong Yu thought about it, the two great Tao powers of ice and fire would shoot out from his body and attack the target that Murong Yu had locked onto. Moreover, the power of the two great Tao powers combined had already surpassed the combined power of the ice controller and the fire controller. Murong Yu had successfully unleashed the power of 1 + 1 greater than 2. Murong Yu, you're now strong enough to kill any of the small controllers. Go and hunt them to your heart's content. Then kill those few controllers. Don't leave a single one alive. The sacred universe Origin stood beside Murong Yu and said murderously. Murong Yu nodded. After getting rid of these small controllers, he would have to face the 7 big controllers. They were so strong that they were the strongest enemies that stood in the way of Murong Yu becoming the Chaos Controller. Now, let's go and kill all the small controllers in the sacred universe, Murong Yu said indifferently and took a step forward. Originally, he had already refined the sacred universe Origin, which was equivalent to controlling the sacred universe. In addition, he was powerful. Therefore, he didn't need the help of the sacred universe Origin to know how many small controllers there were in the sacred universe and where they were. Murong Yu's figure flickered, and in the next instant, he appeared beside one of the little controllers. Together with him was the Saint Universe Origin. Seeing the sacred universe Origin appear directly in front of him, Murong Yu was there. The small controller was simply overjoyed. With a hideous smile, he pounced forward, wanting to kill Murong Yu. Compared to the sacred universe Origin, this small controller wanted to kill Murong Yu more. This was because Murong Yu was a chaotic celestial body. If he could possess him, he would have a chance to become the Chaos Controller. The Chaos Controller was the most powerful existence in the world. No one dared to disobey his words. Murong Yu stood in place and looked at the little master with contempt. This was a controller of Earth. The earthy yellow power of the Great Path lingered around his body. It was quite thick, and he should have an extremely powerful defense. Whoosh! Seeing that the other party was about to pounce on him. Right at that moment, Murong Yu abruptly took a step forward and sent a punch straight toward Wang Chong. The power of a 12th level Tao ancestor was extremely terrifying. It was so fast that the Earth controller didn't even have time to react. Murong Yu's fist had already landed on his head. Immediately, the great chaos of ice and fire burst out at the same time, bombarding the opponent's physical body. Rumble. After the earth-shattering explosion, the Earth Master didn't even have time to react before his entire body, including his soul, was destroyed. Just like that, a dignified little controller was destroyed by a single punch from Murong Yu. It wasn't that the Earth controller's strength was too weak, but that Murong Yu's strength was too strong. After the Earth controller was killed, the Great Tao of Earth wanted to escape. But the Great Tao of Ice and Fire burst out, instantly trapping the Great Tao of Earth. Great Tao of Earth, devour. Murong Yu refined the Great Tao of Earth without hesitation, because the Great Tao of Ice and Fire could fuse into Murong Yu's body. Therefore, the Great Tao of Earth could also coexist with the Great Tao of Ice and Fire in Murong Yu's body. Now, Murong Yu had 3 Great Taos in his body, and his strength soared again. It was also at this time that Murong Yu's realm broke through again. He actually already reached the strength of a 13th level Tao ancestor. However, his realm was still at the 9th level Tao ancestor, because 9th level Tao ancestor was already the peak of the Great Tao realm. And after the Great Tao realm was the controller. Murong Yu could not become a little controller, but the 8 great controllers did not fall. Very obviously, Murong Yu could not become them either. However, his strength and battle prowess were constantly increasing. Therefore, he could only keep piling up. This was a good thing. If he could rise to the level of a 100th level Tao ancestor, even the 8 great controllers would probably be blown away by him with one punch. Of course, this was impossible. The 8 great Taos were the most powerful great Taos under the Chaos Great Tao. How could they be so vulnerable? Moreover, it was impossible for Murong Yu to reach the strength of a 100th level Tao ancestor. Good. Your strength has increased again. Now go and kill all of those 100 over little controllers. The sacred universe Origin laughed loudly, egging on Murong Yu. Murong Yu did not need his instigation, not to mention those little controllers who invaded the sacred universe. Even the other little controllers who did not invade had already been sentenced to death by him. Taking a step forward, Murong Yu moved again, immediately locking onto the next little controller. These little controllers were running amok in the sacred universe, wanting to refine the sacred universe. But they did not expect that the Grim Reaper had already found them. When Murong Yu appeared, they felt that they couldn't even withstand a single blow. Other than the 8 great controllers, there was actually someone who could kill them with one punch. Murong Yu devoured a great Tao every time he killed a little controller. Every time he devoured a great Tao, his great Tao power increased. The more great Tao power he had, the more terrifying his killing power and defense power would be. At the same time, his strength was also slowly increasing. However, if he wanted to rise from the 13th level Tao ancestor to the 14th level Tao ancestor, he would need to expend a lot of energy. However, Murong Yu didn't have anything to worry about. After all, he had 3,000 little controllers to refine. 134 little controllers. Within a day, Murong Yu had already slaughtered all the little controllers who had invaded. Later on, Murong Yu didn't even need to rush over. All he had to do was throw a punch from afar, and those little controllers would fall to the ground. Murong Yu could kill them from afar. In addition to Ice and Fire controller and the others, Murong Yu had now refined close to 140 great Taos. Just standing there, the sacred universe Origin could feel the terrifying great Tao power emanating from Murong Yu's body. At this time, after refining more than 100 little controllers, Murong Yu's strength had also broken through again, reaching the 14th level Tao ancestor level. This was quite terrifying. How terrifying was the battle power of a 14th level Tao ancestor and the strength of more than 100 great Taos. Murong Yu floated in the sacred universe Origin space and suddenly stretched out a large hand. Rumble, suddenly hundreds of millions of large hands stretched out and grabbed in all directions. Immediately after, the Sacred Universe Origin saw pieces of Sacred Universe Origin fragments being grabbed by Murongyu from all directions. Fuse! Murongyu shouted in a low voice and grabbed the Sacred Universe Origin fragments with his large hand. Terrifying power erupted and merged the fragments of the origin of the Sacred Universe into a whole. Immediately after, he slapped this power into the Sacred Universe Origin with one hand. Rumble! Immediately, the Sacred Universe Origin quickly recovered. 20%, 30%. As the Sacred Universe Origin continued to recover, the Sacred Universe, which had almost turned into chaos, expanded again at this time. After more than half a day, the Sacred Universe Origin had become quite powerful. Now, the Sacred Universe was thousands of times bigger than before. Unfortunately, there was no one else in the Sacred Universe except for Murongyu. 60% recovered. Not bad. The Sacred Universe Origin seemed quite satisfied. It's not bad. The remaining 40% has been destroyed and can't be found. Otherwise, I would have helped you find it. Murongyu shook his head and said, "You just need to help me kill those few great controllers. I'll slowly recover in the future. Or, after you become a Chaos Controller, you can recover me." The Sacred Universe Origin smiled and said. Murongyu nodded and took a step forward and disappeared from the Sacred Universe. When he reappeared, he had crossed thousands of universes and arrived at a relatively powerful universe. This universe had also given birth to a small controller. Murongyu's target was that small controller. At this time, that small controller was cultivating in seclusion. However, he didn't expect Murongyu to barge into his place of seclusion and kill him with one palm. After killing this person, Murongyu began to look for other small controllers. Now, Murongyu's strength was quite terrifying. With one step, he could cross the distance of tens of thousands of universes. Moreover, because he had refined more than 100 great Daos, no matter where he went, if there was a small controller who had mastered a great Dao nearby, it would cause the great Dao in his body to resonate. Therefore, Murongyu didn't need to deliberately look for those small controllers at all. He only needed to constantly shuttle back and forth between the various universes, as if he was playing. Whenever he encountered a small controller, there was nothing to say. He would just kill them and be done with it. Anyway, these small controllers were the minions of the 7 great controllers. Even if Murongyu didn't kill them, they would still attack Murongyu. However, there were simply too many universes in the Endless Universe. It wasn't realistic for Murongyu to want to kill all of them in a short period of time. However, Murongyu didn't lack time. As he continued to kill small controllers and refine great Daos, Murongyu's strength continued to increase. The battle strength of a 15th level Dao ancestor. The battle strength of a 16th level Dao ancestor. 1,000 years later, Murongyu's battle strength had reached the 18th level Dao ancestor. This was quite terrifying. With a wave of his hand, he could destroy thousands of universes. In 1,000 years, Murongyu had also killed more than 1,000 small controllers. However, he still couldn't travel through all the universes in 1,000 years. One could imagine how many universes there were. The universe was only the tip of the iceberg of the endless chaos. Then, how big was the endless chaos? 2,000 years later, Murongyu had almost killed all 3,000 small controllers. His battle strength had also reached the 20th level Dao ancestor. With the battle strength of a 20th level Dao ancestor and close to 3,000 great Daos, how terrifying would Murongyu's battle strength be? Chapter 2354. There were still 100 little controllers that had yet to be refined. Therefore, Murongyu had devoured less than 3,000 little controllers. It was not complete yet. However, when Murongyu searched all the universes under the endless chaos, there was still no trace of those 100 little controllers. Murongyu had long confirmed that the 3,000 little controllers had appeared. In that case, since these little controllers existed, but they weren't in these universes, and they hadn't perished yet. Then where were they? Murong Yu thought of a place. The chaotic heavenly palace. Actually, they could also hide in the endless chaos. Moreover, after entering the depths of the endless chaos, it would be difficult for others to find them. However, even if these people escaped into the depths of the endless chaos, it was impossible for them to escape Murong Yu's pursuit. Don't forget that Murong Yu had the ability to track auras. Moreover, after refining 2,900 great paths, his ability would become even more terrifying, and his speed would become even faster. If those little masters truly fled into the depths of the endless primal chaos, Murong Yu would quickly catch up to them and kill them. However, Murong Yu searched the edges of the universe, but did not find any traces of anyone escaping into the endless chaos. Therefore, Murong Yu suspected that they had already escaped into the chaotic heavenly palace. Or perhaps they had been summoned by the 7 little controllers. Did they think that relying on the 7 little controllers could protect their lives? Murong Yu sneered in his heart. It's time to make a trip to the chaotic heavenly palace. It's also time to meet the 7 little controllers. As Murong Yu pondered in his heart, he had already taken a step forward. His entire body smashed through the void as he flew toward the chaotic heavenly palace. At this moment, Murong Yu did not have much confidence in dealing with the 7 little controllers and the 100 little controllers. However, this step would have to be experienced sooner or later. Moreover, with Murong Yu's current strength, he had almost reached the peak. If he could not refine the little controller, the great Tao he controlled would not increase. If his great Tao could not increase, his strength would not stagnate. On the other side, Murong Yu's strength had reached the 20th Tao Ancestor Realm. Murong Yu could feel that the 20th layer of the Tao Ancestor Realm might not be the end of cultivation, as it could still be improved. Perhaps he was a 21st level Tao Ancestor, or perhaps even higher. But what did Murong Yu use to cultivate? Raise his realm? Absorbing the endless power of chaos. There was an enormous amount of primal chaos energy, and a portion of it could be used by Murong Yu. However, he could not directly devour the chaotic energy to increase his cultivation level. It wasn't that the power of chaos wasn't high enough, but that he wasn't a chaos controller yet, so it was impossible for him to fully control it. Even if he had to devour the chaotic energy to cultivate, he would need an extremely long time to advance by 1 level. Perhaps a trillion reincarnation cycles? Murong Yu couldn't wait that long. This was simply too long. Perhaps before he could raise his cultivation level, the Great Void Realm would not be able to withstand it. At that time, the 7 controllers would come looking for him, and he would be in a passive position. It was better to take the initiative now and take the initiative in his own hands. Once he wasn't a match for the 7 controllers now, Murong Yu would immediately escape and enter the depths of the endless chaos. Then, after his strength had increased, he would come back to settle the score. Not long after, Murong Yu had already arrived outside the chaotic heavenly palace. At this time, the door of the chaotic heavenly palace was open, and an extremely huge power of the great Tao continuously spread out from the chaotic heavenly palace, rolling out like a stormy sea. There was a total of 107 powers. Among them, there wasn't the Great Void's aura that Murong Yu was familiar with. 8 great controllers and 100 minor controllers. Shouldn't there be a total of 108 of them? Why did it become 107? Could it be that the Great Void was suppressed? Murong Yu's expression changed slightly, and he immediately became anxious. In the next moment, he took a step forward, and in a flash, he had already entered the chaotic heavenly palace. However, during this process, he had already taken out the Hichu Luo Shu. It floated above his head, and rays of yellow light fell down, firmly enveloping Murong Yu. At the same time, he held the Chaos Blade in his hand, and it rippled with an extremely huge power of chaos. Murong Yu was afraid that the 7 controllers and the 100 minor controllers would attack him. However, to his surprise, the 107 controllers didn't attack him. Whoosh! The moment Murong Yu stepped into the primal chaos heavenly palace, 108 gazes instantly shot towards him. Except for one gaze that gave him a sense of familiarity, the other 107 gazes were unfamiliar to him. 2,900 great Tao powers rippled on the surface of Murong Yu's body, firmly protecting him. After doing all this, he then looked into the chaotic heavenly palace. In the center of the chaotic heavenly palace, a figure that resembled Murong Yu stood on the spot, unable to move. When Murong Yu cast his gaze over, the person's eyes also moved and looked at Murong Yu. "Master!" Murong Yu could not help but exclaim and was about to step forward. This person was the Great Void, the controller of destruction, and also Murong Yu's master. It was obvious that Tai Su had been suppressed by someone. At this moment, he could not even move. He could not even speak. Therefore, when he saw Murong Yu walk over, he only blinked his eyes. "Murong Yu, we have been waiting for a long time." At this moment, a cold voice was heard. Murong Yu then remembered that there were 107 people in the chaotic heavenly palace other than him and the Great Void. Those 100 little controllers were basically negligible. Even if Murong Yu stood there and let them kill him, they would not be able to kill Murong Yu. However, the other 7 people were rather terrifying. Although they did not deliberately emit a powerful aura and were just standing on the spot, Murong Yu felt that they were very powerful. They gave Murong Yu an unfathomable feeling. These people were very powerful. Any one of them was stronger than Murong Yu. Murong Yu could feel the gap between him and them. "Murong Yu, run!" At this moment, the sealed Great Void suddenly roared. However, just as the Great Void spoke, Murong Yu felt a phantom flash, and 2 controllers appeared at the entrance of the chaotic heavenly palace. Controller of Order and Controller of War. The terrifying power that the 2 of them released directly sealed the entrance of the chaotic heavenly palace. If he wanted to leave this place, he had to defeat them. However, with Murong Yu's current strength, could he defeat them? Other than that, there were no extra doors or windows in the entire chaotic heavenly palace. In other words, he could only leave from the entrance. As for destroying the chaotic heavenly palace, that was impossible. "Murong Yu, since you are here, don't leave. You can kill yourself. Perhaps we will consider letting the Great Void go. Otherwise, the 2 of you will definitely die." Before Murong Yu could say anything, the Great Void's eyes turned frantically. Murong Yu could understand what he meant and knew that the Great Void did not want him to give up just like that. Murong Yu didn't feel flustered at all. He'd already made preparations before coming here today. He was prepared to fight to the death with these people. However, before fighting to the death with the 7 controllers, he still had to increase his strength. First, he had to gather all 3,000 great Daos. Only by gathering all 3,000 great Daos would Murong Yu have the power to fight against the 7 controllers. "Are you planning to take over my body after I kill myself, and then advance to become a chaos controller?" Murong Yu sneered. The 7 controllers' expressions did not change at all. They were well aware that which one of them did not want to become a chaos controller. In fact, the eyes of the 100 little controllers lit up. They also wanted to become a chaos controller. If possible, they would definitely snatch it. What if they accidentally became a chaos controller? Wouldn't that mean that he was above everyone else? Murong Yu smiled without the slightest trace of fear on his face. "Actually, I'm here today to tell you a secret. A secret about the chaotic heavenly body." After pausing, Murong Yu continued, "Once I really die, the chaotic heavenly body will disintegrate and return to chaos. You should all be very clear about this. Since ancient times, so many chaotic heavenly bodies have fallen, but who has been able to seize it?" The faces of the 7 controllers immediately darkened. They had already guessed it, but they still held on to the hope in their hearts. But now that Murong Yu said it, it had mercilessly shattered their dreams of advancing to a chaos controller. Their highest achievement was to become one of the 8 great controllers. It was impossible for them to advance further and become a chaos controller. Even if we can't become a chaos controller, we don't want a chaos controller to appear in this world. It's enough that this world is controlled by us. We don't need a stronger existence. The time controller took a step forward and said with a cold expression. The 7 controllers nodded. Even if they could not become a chaos controller, they could not be above the other controllers. However, it was impossible for the other controllers to override him. Their strength was the same, almost on par with each other. As for why they could suppress Tai Su, it was because of the joint power that they had researched for many years and the help of the 100 little controllers. In addition, Tai Su was careless. Otherwise, they would not have been able to suppress Tai Su. After joining forces to suppress Tai Su, the 7 controllers became more vigilant of each other. In the future, it would be impossible for others to use this method to suppress one of them. At the very least, even if they were suppressed, they wouldn't die. Just like Tai Su, although they had joined forces to suppress him, they were unable to kill him. We only need to kill you. It's fine if the Chaos Controller does not exist. The Fate Controller said indifferently. Murong Yu's eyes suddenly burst out with a ball of light. You want to kill me? Then do it. As he spoke, he had already taken a step forward. Boom! A large hand suddenly stretched out, and billions of large hands instantly attacked, blasting towards the 7 controllers. A trace of haze flashed across the faces of the 7 controllers. They never thought that Murong Yu would dare to attack them first. This infuriated several of them. Immediately, they attacked almost at the same time. With a punch, they were about to shatter the power of Murong Yu's attack. However, at this moment, waves of screams crazily rang out. The 7 controllers looked over and saw that the 100 small controllers who were originally standing at the side had been blown up by Murong Yu's punch. At this moment, Murong Yu was slapping the 100 great Daos in his body. What a treacherous little bastard. Seeing this, the 7 controllers could not help but be furious. It turned out that Murong Yu's attack on them was fake. Murong Yu's real target was not them, but the 100 small controllers. While the 7 controllers were enraged, Great Void's eyes revealed a look of admiration. Murong Yu's attack on the 7 Hall Masters wasn't the only reason he was faking it. The reason why he was talking so much nonsense with the 7 Hall Masters was because he wanted to distract them. In fact, talking and attacking was just to pave the way for killing the 100 small controllers. Rumble, after the 100 great Daos were devoured and refined by Murong Yu, Murong Yu's great Daos finally reached the level of small perfection. 3,000 great Daos. After gathering the 3,000 great Daos, Murong Yu's battle prowess, which had reached the level of a 20th level Dao ancestor, broke through again and reached the level of a 21st level Dao ancestor. It was also at this time that the 3,000 great Daos, which were originally perfectly integrated in Murong Yu's body and did not interfere with each other, also underwent earth-shaking changes. Originally, the 3,000 great Daos treated Murong Yu's body as a container. They just gathered in this container and did not fuse or interfere with each other. However, after the 3,000 great Daos gathered in Murong Yu's body, they began to fuse with each other. These changes happened in an instant. The speed was so fast that even Murong Yu, the person involved, did not react, let alone the other 7 controllers. By the time they reacted, the changes in Murong Yu's body had disappeared. At this time, the original 3,000 great Daos had fused into one great Dao. Rumble, Murong Yu's power sword again. 22nd level Dao ancestor, 23rd level Dao ancestor. In the end, when Murong Yu reached the level of a 30th level Dao ancestor, the increase in his power stopped. The battle prowess of a 30th level Dao ancestor. How terrifying was this power? Murong Yu could annihilate billions of universes with a flick of his finger. He was the strongest person under the 8 controllers. Even if he stood here and let the 3,000 little controllers bombard him, they would not hurt him at all. This was Murong Yu's current battle prowess. In fact, the increase in battle prowess was secondary. The most terrifying thing was his power of Great Dao. After the 3,000 Great Daos fused, they formed one Great Dao. What was this Great Dao? It was not the Destruction Great Dao, nor was it the Order Great Dao. It was not any of the 8 Great Dao. Murong Yu could feel that this Great Dao was somewhat like chaos. Because ever since this Great Dao appeared in his body, He felt that his entire person had already merged with the endless chaos. This was like the relationship between water and fish. Morongyu was the fish, and the endless chaos was the water. Morongyu could swim freely in the water. The water had a vital effect on him. But Morongyu could not control this water. In other words, he was unable to control the endless chaos. He could feel that he had not truly merged into the endless chaos yet. Only by completely merging, only by becoming one with the endless chaos, could he truly control the endless chaos. It was just that. How could he perfectly merge into the chaos? Morongyu, on the other hand, was completely confused. Perhaps his comprehension was not deep enough, or perhaps the time was not yet right. But no matter what, his current strength had soared by leaps and bounds. It was also at this time that Morongyu could finally feel the strength of the 7 controllers. He currently had the battle prowess of a 30th level Dao ancestor. The true strength of the 7 controllers was a little stronger than him, roughly between 30th level Dao ancestor and 40th level Dao ancestor. However, the 7 people's great Dao power was not much different. Their overall strength was about the same. But Morongyu could also clearly feel that there was still a gap between the great Dao that he had mastered and their great Dao. Even in terms of pure strength, there was still a gap. In general, he had already closed the gap between his strength and the 7 controllers. But in reality, there was still a big gap. He was still not a match for them. Kill. But Morongyu could not care so much. Today, he would fight to the death. Therefore, he suddenly roared and erupted with the limit of his great Dao power, strength, mind power, chaos blade, and other powers to attack the 2 controllers at the entrance of the chaotic heavenly palace. Chapter 23:55. The 2 controllers were infuriated. They attacked at the same time, sending a punch and a palm towards Morongyu. Morongyu gritted his teeth. With the Hichu Luoshu above his head, he charged forward. He knew very well that the chaotic heavenly palace was too small and could not be used at all. If he were to fight here, he would definitely die. Only when he was outside in the endless chaos could Morongyu choose to fight or run. Boom! Boom! In a split second, Morongyu had already controlled the Hichu Luoshu to block in front of him. Immediately, the power of the Order Controller and War Controller blasted onto the Hichu Luoshu. The Hichu Luoshu was the #1 book in the world. With Morongyu's current strength, its power was quite terrifying. However, even so, it could not block the attacks of the 2 controllers. After dissipating most of the power, there was still a portion that overflowed and blasted onto Chuyun's body. Immediately, Morongyu's physical body and soul were on the verge of shattering. However, Morongyu didn't care. He gathered all his strength and fiercely slammed it into the Order Master. Bang! The mountain-like figure of the controller was blasted back a step. It was this step back that gave Morongyu an opportunity. In the next moment, Morongyu turned into a stream of light and shot out from the gap between the Order Controller and War Controller. Puff! Just as Morongyu rushed out of the chaotic heavenly palace, he finally could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood. In the end, he was still injured. Swoosh! 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 Morongyu did not stop. In a flash, he had already gone far away. Behind him, the 7 controllers chased after him like shadows attached to his body. During this process, the 7 controllers unleashed a terrifying power of the Great Path and blasted towards Morongyu. Morongyu inwardly cried out in pain. The power of the Great Path of the 7 controllers was quite terrifying. Even if he was only hit by the shock waves, his body and soul would be on the verge of collapsing. What made Morongyu feel the most helpless was that the 7 controllers' speed was far above his. Morongyu didn't manage to escape for long before they caught up to him and wrapped him up again. Morongyu, surrender. The Death Controller took a step forward and said in a hoarse voice. 7 terrifying great Dao powers sealed off the sky. Morongyu could not escape at all. Moreover, he was unable to enter Hichu Luoshu. The power of the great Dao released by the 7 controllers prevented Morongyu from entering Hichu Luoshu. It was even impossible to retrieve items from the Hichu Luo Shu. Now, Morongyu only had two choices. One was to commit suicide, and the other was to fight to the death. Morongyu would definitely not commit suicide. Even if he did, he would die in battle. Therefore, he only had one choice, and that was to fight to the death. Kill. Without saying a word, Morongyu roared. He unleashed his maximum power and was about to fight 300 rounds with everyone. Since that's the case, let's just destroy him. We don't need the Chaos Controller. The Death Controller said in a hoarse voice. The other 6 controllers nodded and attacked again. Rumble, 7 extremely powerful great Tao powers erupted violently and blasted towards Morongyu. As soon as the powers of both sides collided, Morongyu's power was destroyed. It was simply too weak to withstand a single blow. Kill! 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 Morongyu roared again and again. He unleashed his strongest attack and fought crazily. However, the other party had the advantage in numbers and strength. How could they be his match? Boom! 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 The 7 great Tao powers blasted onto the Hichu Luo Shu and blasted the Hichu Luo Shu away. The Chaos power from the Chaos Blade had no effect on the 7 controllers. It was also blasted away. Suddenly, the power of the 7 controllers blasted onto Morongyu's body. In addition to the overflowing damage from the Hichu Luo Shu, how could Morongyu, who was not a controller, withstand the attack of the 7 controllers? Bang! After an explosion, Morongyu's body and soul exploded, turning into a cloud of blood mist and disappearing between heaven and earth. But even so, the 7 controllers still seemed uneasy. A terrifying power of the Great Path erupted and swept out in all directions. In the end, they shattered the heaven and earth. After confirming that Morongyu would not be resurrected, they were relieved. Whoosh! Whoosh! After Morongyu's death, the Hitu and the Luo Shu turned into a yellow ray of light and quickly disappeared into the endless primal chaos. It was so fast that even the 7 rulers couldn't react in time. After Hichu Luo Shu, a huge tree appeared out of thin air. If Morongyu was here, he would recognize it. This towering tree was the Tree of Life. Bang! 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 After the Tree of Life appeared, the spirit soul fruits that were originally hanging on the branches all exploded. Then, the Tree of Life trembled and quickly shrunk. It disappeared into the depths of the chaos. The soul spiritual fruits had the effect of resurrecting people. However, they were all shattered. In other words, Morongyu could not rely on the soul spiritual fruits to resurrect. At the same time that Morongyu's body and soul were destroyed in the Great Void Universe. Bang! Bang! After 2 muffled sounds, Morongyu's 2 clones exploded at the same time. At the same time, Morongyu's soul spiritual jade slip also shattered into dust. Morongyu was completely dead. After hearing this news, Zhao Jiqing, Morongyu, Li Feng, Li Ling, and the others could not believe it. While they were shocked, they were also furious. However, they still maintained their rationality. They all knew Morongyu was really dead this time. It was definitely the 7 controllers who killed Morongyu. No matter how angry they were and how much they wanted to kill the 7 controllers, they could not do it. Even Morongyu wasn't a match for them. If even Morongyu had been killed, what could they do? However, would Morongyu's revenge be forgotten just like that? The 7 controllers were still in the same place. Their consciousness was like the sea, monitoring this place to prevent Morongyu from resurrecting. Then, was Morongyu really dead? That's right, he was really dead. However, he was not dead. In the distant depths of the endless primal chaos, a wisp of Morongyu's spiritual sense appeared after his death. Yes, it was just a wisp of consciousness. Morongyu slowly recovered his spiritual sense. He looked around at the depths of the primal chaos, where he couldn't even see his own fingers, and felt the primal chaos energy flowing through his body. A feeling of perfect integration into the chaos rose again. Am I dead? Or am I not dead? Morongyu pondered. All of a sudden, scenes appeared in his mind. Those scenes were all unfamiliar to him. They were not scenes from his life. Yes, these scenes are the memories of the previous chaotic celestial bodies. However, why would their memories appear in my memory? Could it be that I won't really die, but will be reincarnated? Murong Yu thought, and a flash of understanding flashed through his mind. However, he was very unwilling to accept this. The memories of every chaotic celestial body that had fallen before appeared in his memory. This meant that all the chaotic celestial bodies were actually the same person, and he would not really die. Now, it was just that Murong Yu had died, but the chaotic celestial bodies had not fallen. Instead, they were reincarnated again. However, Murong Yu was unwilling to accept this. How many lives had it been? How many times had he been reincarnated? This was the greatest achievement. If he was reincarnated again, how many lives would he have to live to reach the level of this life? Moreover, even if he reached the level of this life, it was impossible to become a controller of chaos. How can I become a controller of chaos? After a person dies, they will return to chaos. What exactly is primal chaos? Murong Yu pondered and tried to comprehend it. Chaos is a tangible existence, but it is also intangible. I, on the other hand, am an existence with form and substance. Although I can fuse into the chaos, I cannot truly become one with the chaos. How can I become one with chaos? Let chaos become me, or I become the endless chaos. The controller of chaos controls chaos, so it should not be me becoming chaos, but the chaos becoming me. Yes, I finally understand. If I want to control chaos, I have to make it a part of me, and I will be the controller of chaos. Suddenly, a flash of understanding flashed through Murong Yu's mind. It was also at this time that a power that was even above the endless chaos suddenly burst out from his spiritual consciousness and instantly swept in all directions, engulfing the entire endless chaos. At this time, the originally vast and endless chaos became a universe, and even the size of a planet, clearly appearing in Murong Yu's line of sight. Controller of chaos, control the chaos for me. Murong Yu suddenly roared. The next moment, he felt that his spiritual consciousness had already enveloped the entire endless chaos. The entire chaos, including all life in the chaos, was under his control. As long as he was willing, he could destroy billions of universes with a thought and make everything return to the endless chaos. As long as he was willing, he could create billions of universes with a thought. The endless chaos was him, and he was the endless chaos. As long as he was willing, he could do anything with a thought. Condense the physical body, Murong Yu roared. The next moment, a perfect physical body had already appeared in the endless chaos. Whether it was the physical body, bones, meridians, or soul, they were all perfect. In fact, Murong Yu even saw that this physical body had already merged with the entire chaos. In other words, unless Murong Yu was willing, no one could destroy this physical body. Unless, of course, the entire primordial chaos was destroyed. A long time had passed, but the 7 controllers still did not see Murong Yu resurrect, so they were slightly relieved. Although Murong Yu is dead, the chaotic celestial body is immortal. We have to watch the chaotic celestial body reincarnate. This time, we can't let him grow, the death controller said faintly, his voice full of endless killing intent. The other 6 controllers nodded in agreement. Murong Yu had grown too quickly this time, and he was a threat to them. They would not continue to make such a mistake. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Before he could finish his sentence, many figures suddenly appeared around them out of thin air. Among these people were some cultivators who were not even Dao ancestors. They were all people from the Sanctuary Alliance. They were some of Murong Yu's elders, including Murong Yu's wife, children, son-in-law, brothers, senior brothers, friends, disciples, and so on. This included the destruction controller, who had previously been sealed by the 7 controllers. His sudden appearance gave everyone a shock, because they had all appeared in the depths of the endless chaos. Normally, the chaos power would have already torn them to pieces. But today, the chaos power was quite friendly to them. The destruction controller stood there in a daze. At this time, the seal on him by the 7 controllers had disappeared without a trace. He knew that it was definitely not the 7 controllers being kind. The 7 controllers were also stunned. Why did these people appear here? Strange. It was too strange. Could it be that this matter had something to do with Moronyu? Moronyu was not really dead? Could it be that he had become the Chaos Controller? Otherwise, how could all this be explained? You guessed right. That's right. I have become the Chaos Controller. I control the endless chaos in your lives. At this time, a figure appeared out of thin air in front of everyone. Who could it be if it was not Moronyu? Chaos Controller? Everyone was shocked. After the shock, some people cheered and were excited. But the 7 controllers were not excited. Instead, they were afraid. Yes, Moronyu had become a Chaos Controller after all. Kill! The 7 controllers looked at each other and attacked Moronyu together. Moronyu looked at them indifferently and said, "Deprive." Swoosh! 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 In an instant, 7 Grand Daos flew out from the 7 Grand Daos and landed in Moronyu's hand. Finally, Moronyu flicked them with his finger, and they flew straight into the endless chaos. The 7 controllers immediately looked horrified and screamed, "You deprived us of our great Daos?" A brilliant smile appeared on Moronyu's face. "That's not all. I'll also take away all of your strength and your right to cultivate forever. You'll be mortals for the rest of your lives, but you'll have an endless lifespan. Even if you want to die, you won't be able to." Before he could finish his sentence, no energy fluctuations could be sensed from the 7 controllers' bodies. Furthermore, everyone saw that the physical bodies of the 7 controllers had become extremely weak. They were even weaker than ordinary people in the mortal world. They would probably be exhausted to death from working in the world, right? With a wave of his hand, the 7 controllers disappeared on the spot. The next moment, everyone saw a scene. In a certain mortal world, the 7 controllers appeared. However, what made everyone's jaws drop was that the 7 controllers were completely dressed like beggars at this time. They would never be able to cultivate, their bodies were weak, and they didn't even know how to farm. However, they had endless life and couldn't even commit suicide. In other words, the 7 controllers could only be beggars in the future. They would suffer all kinds of hardships, supercilious looks, and humiliation. These 7 guys should be like this. Killing them directly would be letting them off easy. Murong Xian laughed loudly, feeling very relieved. Everyone else was happy as well. Originally, when they knew that the 7 of them had killed Morongyu, they couldn't wait to kill them all. Now, they realized that killing them directly would be letting them off easy. Morong, you should do that. Morong, you really became a chaos controller? Zhao Jiqing walked up and asked with some uncertainty. Of course. Morong Yu smiled slightly, then turned to look at the destruction controller. Master, you can continue to be the destruction controller. As for the other 7 controllers and even the 3,000 little controllers, everyone looked at Morongyu with expectant gazes. They were just short of begging Morongyu to bestow them with the position of controller. Morongyu glanced at everyone and said, "Of course, I can let someone among you become a controller or a little controller. However, I haven't decided to do that. As for who can become the controller and the little controller, this will all depend on your own efforts. Everyone, work hard. Everyone here has the possibility of becoming a controller. It's also possible that none of you will be able to become a controller." Fair and just. No one blamed Morongyu. On the contrary, they were all very excited. This was exactly what they needed. Whether they could become a little controller or a controller depended on themselves. All right, everyone disperse. Jiqing, I'll take the 5 of you to travel in the endless chaos. After so many years, I finally have time to take you out to play. Morongyu laughed as he brought the 5 women with him and slowly left towards the depths of the primal chaos. As for Morongyu's parents and relatives who he had always wanted to revive, Morongyu did not do so. This was because they had all been reincarnated and were now living well. If Morongyu were to forcefully resurrect them, then they would die a sudden death in this lifetime. Many unfortunate families would suffer as a result. Therefore, Morongyu gave up on reviving them. Big Baddie, what's so fun about the depths of the chaos? There are many fun places. Don't lie to us. You are Morongyu's wives. Why would I lie to you? That's good. The laughter gradually faded away. End of book. Chapter 2356. Big Bad Guy. Why do I feel like I'm being spied on these few days? Tell me, are you spying on me? One day, when Murongyu was playing with his 5 wives in the endless chaos, Kurlon suddenly looked at Murongyu fiercely and said, not only Kurlon, but even Zhao Jiqing, Yu Mengqing, and the others were staring at Murongyu with malicious eyes. Murongyu frowned slightly. You all noticed it too? The women were shocked and looked at Murongyu in horror. You have this feeling too? Is there someone spying on us? Aren't you the chaos controller? You even control the entire endless chaos. Is there someone above you? Everyone's face darkened. If that was the case, they were being watched again. This was definitely not a good thing. Morongyu nodded. In fact, he had already noticed it before the women. Strictly speaking, he had already noticed it after he became the chaos controller. Why did he play with the women in the endless chaos after becoming the chaos controller? The first reason was to bring the women out to play. The other reason was that he wanted to figure out this matter. After this period of sightseeing, Morongyu gradually realized that the boundless primal chaos wasn't truly endless. There was an end to the endless chaos. Morongyu was gradually approaching the end of the endless chaos. Since the endless chaos was not the end, could it be another world? Then it was possible that there were other experts. After all, little Loli had disappeared again. After Murongyu became the chaos controller, he did not find little Loli. Little Loli could not have fallen, nor could she have disappeared into thin air. Then it could only mean that little Loli had left the endless chaos. Don't worry, no matter how strong the other party is in my world, I can only protect you. Morongyu smiled and comforted Zhao Jiqing and the others. Smiles appeared on the faces of the 5 women. However, Morongyu saw the worry hidden under the 5 women's bright smiles. They continued to play, but Morongyu became even more vigilant. However, although Morongyu had the feeling of being spied on, he did not discover anything. This could only mean one thing. The other party's strength was far greater than Shu Yan's. Whoosh! On this day, just as everyone was having fun in the endless chaos, a figure appeared in front of Murongyu and the others out of thin air. It really appeared out of thin air. Murongyu didn't even have time to react. He only reacted when he saw who it was. Looking over, it was a young man. He wasn't very handsome, but the smile on his body was as warm as the spring breeze. Murongyu did not sense any killing intent or malicious intent from him. But what shocked him was that he couldn't see through his opponent's strength at all. Unfathomable. Even Murongyu couldn't see through his opponent's realm? Wasn't this too terrifying? Who was this person? Murongyu took a step forward and blocked everyone behind him. At the same time, he increased his strength to the maximum. If the other party had any malicious intent, he would definitely destroy him. Although, he didn't know if he could kill him. 4th brother, don't worry. The young man looked at Murongyu with a bright smile on his face. 4th brother. Murongyu looked at him in confusion. He didn't know him at all. Since when did he become his 4th brother? Oh, I forgot to introduce myself. I'm your 3rd brother. My name is Jiyuchen. 4th brother, nice to meet you. The young man smiled and extended his hand to Murongyu. However, Morongyu's expression remained vigilant. Jiyuchen smiled and waved his hand. In the next moment, Murongyu felt the scenery in front of him change. Then he disappeared. When he reappeared, he was in an unfamiliar space. Other than him and Jiyuchen, Zhao Jiqing and the others had disappeared. What did you do to them? Murongyu looked at Jiyuchen with a murderous look. Jiyuchen didn't say anything. He just waved his hand. Suddenly, a portrait appeared in front of Murongyu. It was a place with beautiful mountains and clear water, with birds chirping and flowers blooming. In front of a picturesque building, a group of women were talking. Zhao Jiqing and the others were among them. Although he couldn't hear what they were talking about, he could see that they were talking happily. In such a short time, Zhao Jiqing and the others were already familiar with the women. When Murong Yu took a closer look, he noticed that those women weren't inferior to Zhao Jiqing and the others in terms of looks. In fact, they were on par with each other. However, they were more powerful. In fact, he had already surpassed Murong Yu. Do you see the woman in white? She's my wife, your sister-in-law, Jiang Chenxi. Ji Yuchen pointed at one of the women and said with a smile. Murong Yu looked over and nodded. Ji Yuchen continued. The two women are Lu Ji and Zhang Ying. They are your second brother's wife and sister-in-law. The other two are your eldest brother's women, Caroline and Xia. What's our relationship? I don't know you at all. And your so-called second brother and eldest brother. I hope you can give me an explanation. Seeing that Zhao Jiqing and the others were fine, Murong Yu immediately relaxed. However, the biggest problem now was to figure out Ji Yuchen's identity. Ji Yuchen smiled and gestured for Murong Yu to sit down. Fourth brother, you must think that the endless chaos you're in is endless, right? After you became the chaos controller, are you the strongest? Isn't that the case? Murong Yu retorted. That was what he had always thought. However, something was wrong now. The chaos you're in is not the endless chaos. It can only be called a small chaos. Actually, we call it the real world. You're the true master of the real world. Ji Yuchen waved his hand again. In the next moment, four illusions appeared in Murong Yu's vision. One of them was the chaos he was in, which was the real world Ji Yuchen mentioned. Beside his real world, there were three other real worlds. However, these three real worlds were much more powerful than Murong Yu's real world. If Murong Yu's real world was an egg, the other three real worlds were dragon eggs. The difference between the two was huge. The bigger the real world, the more powerful the true master of the real world is. Fourth brother, you're still not strong enough. Ji Yuchen sighed with a worried look on his face. Among the four real worlds, the biggest one is the eldest brother. Lin Xing below him is the second brother, Qin Xian. Ji Yuchen introduced. Murong Yu finally understood. His so-called eldest brother was called Lin Xing, his second brother was called Qin Xian, and the third one was naturally Ji Yuchen. However, how did they come to be related? Actually, the real world you and I are in is only the tip of the iceberg in the endless chaos. The true primal chaos was boundless. However, this world is divided into two parts. One part is the world we're in. The other part is occupied by other living beings. Why do we call them living beings? Because they're not normal living beings. There are negative emotions. Negative emotions produce various dark forces and life force condensed from the darkness of human nature. Ji Yuchen explained. Murong Yu nodded and listened carefully. Everyone, even true masters of the real world like you and me, will have negative and negative moments. We will also have a dark side in our hearts. The living beings in the other world rely on these negative forces to survive and even increase their strength. Therefore, as long as we don't go extinct, they'll continue to increase and become stronger. In fact, even if we go extinct, they won't disappear. In the beginning, only our eldest brother, Lin Xing, became a true master and fought against those living beings. Later, my second brother also joined, and then I joined as well. However, our participation wasn't enough to suppress the other party. On the contrary, as we become stronger, the cultivators in the real world become stronger, and they become stronger as well. With just the three of us, we won't be able to hold them off. Therefore, we originally didn't want to disturb your happy life. However, we really can't hold them off any longer. Therefore, we can only drag him out and help us. Murong Yu nodded. He already had a general understanding. According to what you're saying, the four of us are the true masters of the four real worlds? That's why we're brothers? Ji Yuchen nodded. The real world isn't formed naturally. It's formed by itself. Your real world is only a prototype. Therefore, you have to continue cultivating and try to complete it as soon as possible to help us fight against the enemy. Otherwise, we really won't be able to hold on. Murong Yu nodded. If even an expert like Ji Yuchen said that he couldn't hold on, it seemed that they really couldn't hold on. However, what realms were there after the True Master realm? The Chaos realm. Actually, our true masters are in the Chaos realm. Of course, other than us four true masters, others can also step into the Chaos realm. Currently, there are many experts in the real worlds of my brothers and I who have stepped into the Chaos realm. However, our true masters can use the power of the real worlds. As long as we're in this universe, no one can kill us. Of course, if we go up against those living beings, we'll still die. Therefore, you have to make yourself stronger. As he spoke, Ji Yuchen sent a ray of light into Murong Yu's body. This was the cultivation realm after the controller realm. There were many of them. Lin Xing, Qin Xian, and Ji Yuchen were definitely in the highest realm. As for Murong Yu himself, he was still in the lowest realm. Chapter 2357. After Murong Yu's understanding, he finally found out about the realm above the Chaos Controller. After the Chaos Controller was the Chaos Realm. There were 3 more realms in the Chaos Realm, namely the Divine Origin Realm, the Great Evolution Realm, and the Great Change Realm. Naturally, Lin Xing, Qin Xian, and Ji Yuchen were all super experts in the Heavenly Tao Realm. Their strength was earth-shattering and quite terrifying. However, the creatures of the other world were even more terrifying. Lin Xing, Qin Xian, and Ji Yuchen alone couldn't stop them. Once they were defeated, the real world would collapse and be invaded by the dark world. Naturally, Chu Yun and everyone else from the real world had to die. Everyone would die. It didn't matter if he died, but Murong Yu wouldn't allow his women, children, and relatives to die. Why did he want to become the Chaos Controller? His goal was to protect his family. Now, the people of the dark world were eyeing the real world covetously. Murong Yu suddenly felt a lot of pressure. The dark world naturally referred to the creatures of the other world. Because they were creatures born from the dark side of the real world, they were called the dark world and the dark creatures. Now, he knew the realms. There were still 3 major realms. But how to cultivate? In order to become a primal chaos controller, Murong Yu had already died once. Originally, he thought that he had reached the end of the chaos controller. But now, there are still 3 major realms. How could he cultivate or break through? Therefore, he looked at Ji Yuchen. Lin Xing, Qin Xian, and Ji Yuchen were all true lords of the real world. Their previous experiences might be very different. But from the chaos controller to the Tai Chi mirror now, Murong Yu's experience should be similar. Actually, it's quite simple for us to raise our realms. Ji Yuchen looked at Murong Yu and smiled. Murong Yu looked at Ji Yuchen suspiciously. Simple? He didn't think it was simple. Although the creatures of the dark world are filled with dark and negative energy, but that power was also quite pure. If you can completely refine it, you will be able to increase your cultivation. That's how we all cultivate. Murong Yu frowned. If that was the case, he would have to go deep into the dark world to cultivate. Otherwise, with the terrifying power he needed to break through, how many dark creatures would he need? Besides, didn't Ji Yuchen say that all dark creatures were terrifying? If he rushed into the dark world, wouldn't it be very dangerous? Of course, Murong Yu wasn't afraid of death. He just didn't want to die in the dark world. After all, he still had a long way to go. He was carrying all the lives of the true world on his shoulders. If he would die, Ji Yuchen and the other 2 would not be able to hold on. Then, the entire true world would be destroyed. Seeing Murong Yu's gloomy face, Ji Yuchen's face turned serious as well. 4th brother, are you willing to go to the dark world to train? If you're not willing, the 3 of us will not force you. This was no longer a question of whether he was willing or not. Murong Yu had no choice. Therefore, he nodded solemnly. All right. However, before you go to the dark world, let me bring you to a place so that you can get to know the dark creatures. As he spoke, Ji Yuchen waved his hand. Then, he and Murong Yu disappeared from where they were. When they reappeared, Murong Yu had arrived at a place where the entire sky was dark. The entire space was gloomy, as if dark clouds were hanging over the sky. After entering this space, a strong sense of oppression grew in Murong Yu's heart and spread throughout Murong Yu's body. Involuntarily, Murong Yu felt an inexplicable sense of irritation and a hint of murderous intent. He couldn't help but feel murderous. At this moment, he wanted to kill someone. Even his eyes were starting to turn red. Feeling the inexplicable murderous intent, Murong Yu couldn't help but be shocked. Then, he channeled the energy in his body and suppressed the murderous intent that grew out of nowhere. When he turned to look at Ji Yuchen, he realized that Ji Yuchen's expression hadn't changed at all. After all, Ji Yuchen's strength was at the Tai Chi realm, which was much higher than Murong Yu's. Moreover, Ji Yuchen had been training in the dark world for many years, killing dark creatures. He was probably familiar with everything in the dark world. This is the dark energy, the power that the dark creatures rely on to survive and strengthen themselves. It's also the dark side in the hearts of all the creatures in the real world. As long as we don't all die, the dark energy will not disappear. The dark energy in the dark world is getting denser. The denser the dark energy is, the faster the power of the dark creatures will increase. Once they completely surpass us, our real world will be invaded, Ji Yuchen explained. Murong Yu didn't say anything. He only nodded. In fact, he was familiarizing himself with the dark energy here. Everything was a gradual cycle. There had to be a process of adaptation. This was the reason why Ji Yuchen brought him here. Seeing that Murong Yu was familiarizing himself with the dark energy, Ji Yuchen didn't say anything else. He just stood quietly beside Murong Yu. After a long time, Murong Yu finally opened his eyes. Now, he was finally familiar with the dark energy. The dark energy couldn't affect him anymore. However, Murong Yu guessed that the dark energy wasn't dense. If he was in the dark world, the dark energy there would be hundreds of millions of times stronger. You're familiar with the dark energy now? Ji Yuchen asked when he saw Murong Yu open his eyes. Murong Yu nodded. Then, I'll show you the dark creatures now. Ji Yuchen smiled and waved his hand. The next moment, whoosh, a humanoid, translucent creature appeared in Murong Yu's sight. It wasn't made of flesh and blood. The creature's body was dark, as if it was formed by the dark energy. Its body emitted a dense dark aura. This was the dark creature. After the dark creature appeared, Murong Yu frowned slightly. Because of the appearance of the dark creature, there was a disturbance in his heart. The dark side that he had suppressed earlier was once again stirred. This is the lowest level of dark creature. This space was built by me, Big Brother, Second Brother, and the others to simulate the dark world. These dark creatures and dark energy are real. We usually use it to train others, Ji Yuchen explained to Murong Yu. Murong Yu wasn't surprised by this space. However, the dark creature in front of him was only the lowest level of dark creature. This shocked Murong Yu. This was because the dark creature's strength was similar to his. Murong Yu is now a chaos controller, which was actually the ethereal realm. However, in the real world, there were only a few people who could reach the ethereal realm. However, the life in the dark world was hundreds of millions of times more than the life in the real world. If the most ordinary dark creature's strength reached the ethereal realm, it was terrifying. It was no wonder that Ji Yuchen and the other two couldn't hold on for much longer. It was already good enough that they could hold on for such a long time in such a terrifying dark world. The dark creatures are the same as the real world. They have all kinds of appearances: human, demon, dragon, and so on. However, this was just their way of showing it. They are all dark creatures and don't differentiate by race, Ji Yuchen continued to explain. Looking at the dark creature that was about to pounce on them, Murong Yu nodded and said calmly, "Third brother, let him go. I'll fight this dark creature." As he spoke, Murong Yu had already stepped forward. At this moment, the seal on the dark creature that was originally sealed had been lifted. Whoosh! Its body was like lightning as it charged in front of Murong Yu. Then, it clawed at Murong Yu, trying to crush Murong Yu's body. Murong Yu coldly snorted, took a step forward, and sent a punch flying over. Boom! In the blink of an eye, the fist and the claw collided violently in the void. In the earth-shattering sound, the terrifying impact swept in all directions. Both Murong Yu and the dark creature were sent flying by the collision. Chuyin finally stopped after smashing through countless space-time. However, he looked at the dark creature with a solemn expression and waved his hand. Although Murong Yu had dodged in a flash, his fist had nearly been shattered by the impact. In addition, the terrifying dark energy flowed through his arm and rushed into his body, triggering the dark side in his heart. On the other hand, the dark creature was only sent flying and seemed to be unharmed. Although its body was formed by the dark energy, it was more terrifying than an origin weapon. It was even stronger than Chu Yun's body. It was terrifying. Again, Murong Yu bellowed as he took the lead and charged forward. Meanwhile, the dark creatures let out a sinister laugh and pounced on them. Soul attack. However, it was useless. This was because the dark creature did not have any soul. It only had the most primitive killing intent. Therefore, Murong Yu could only rely on other combat skills and divine powers to fight with the dark creature. Boom, boom, boom. Large patches of the void were shattered. In the end, after fighting for half a day, Murong Yu finally defeated the dark creature. Murong Yu looked at Ji Yuchen and smiled embarrassedly. He was one of the true lords of the real world. He actually needed half a day to defeat the lowest level dark creature. What if he had to face multiple dark creatures, or even higher level dark creatures? He had no choice but to flee. This is already considered good. Back then, I was in a worse state than you. Ji Yuchen smiled and did not mock him. This was because he had also reached this level. His performance back then was similar to Murong Yu's. This is the dark creature's crystal core. Murong Yu looked at the dark gray fist-sized crystal core in his hand and asked doubtfully, "Can we really refine it?" Ji Yuchen nodded. "You can try it now." Murong Yu did not say anything and sat down cross-legged, preparing to refine the dark creature's crystal core. Chapter 2358. A dark creature's core was similar to a normal beast core. However, it was extremely hard and difficult to refine. Even with Murong Yu's true Lord rank strength, refining a low-level dark creature's core was extremely difficult. Chaos Furnace. Murong Yu directly used the Chaos Furnace. However, the dark creature's core was simply too difficult to refine. Murong Yu used his maximum strength, and the speed of refining the dark creature's core became extremely slow. If it were any other ferocious beast, Murong Yu would have refined it in an instant. As the core was slowly refined, a pure and extremely large amount of dark energy slowly flowed into Murong Yu's body. The energy was extremely pure and did not need to be purified. However, because it was dark energy, it could not be directly absorbed. If a normal person was invaded, their body would immediately explode and die. During this process, Murong Yu also began to observe and study the dark creature. The dark creature was relatively high level and was almost on the same level as the chaos energy. If he wanted to absorb it and even turn his own energy into a dark creature, it would take a very long time. Seeing that Murong Yu was cultivating, Ji Yuchen silently left the space. As someone who had been through this, he knew how difficult it was to take the first step. In the past, his speed of taking the first step was considered fast, but it still took him 100,000 years. Now, it was up to how long Murong Yu would take the first step. Moreover, time acceleration was useless. This was because once Murong Yu entered Hichu Luoshu, there would not be so much dark energy in Hichu Luoshu. That would not be of much help to his breakthrough. Only by completely immersing himself in the dark energy would Murong Yu be able to take the first step more easily. 1 year, 100 years, 1,000 years, 10,000 years passed in the blink of an eye. Boom! On this day, dark energy suddenly erupted from Murong Yu's body. In the beginning, there was not much dark energy and the color was close to transparent. However, as time passed, there was more and more dark energy and the color became darker. In the end, a large amount of dark energy enveloped Murong Yu's entire body. I finally succeeded. Muronyu abruptly opened his eyes and stood up with a smile on his face. After 10,000 years of cultivation, he had finally turned his energy into dark energy. Furthermore, at this moment, he could switch between his original power and the dark power with just a thought. However, Muronyu also realized that after changing to dark energy, his combat strength had increased by at least 30%. One could imagine how terrifying the dark energy was. It was even more terrifying than the chaotic energy that Muronyu currently. Let's find another dark creature to fight and see how strong my new power is. Muronyu is filled with fighting spirit. However, before he could find a dark creature, Jiyuchen appeared out of thin air to him. Fourth brother, you've already controlled dark energy. It's only been 10,000 years. Jiyuchen looked at Muronyu in shock. Muronyu had only been controlling dark energy for 1/10 of the time that he had, so he could not help but be shocked. However, while he was shocked, Jiyuchen was more than happy. This was because the faster Muronyu grew, the greater the hope of their universe. It's already been 10,000 years. Is it still fast? Muronyu looked at Jiyuchen in confusion. Jiyuchen was speechless, but he did not say it out loud. Otherwise, it would be too embarrassing. He only nodded. It's already very fast. You're even faster than the three of us. However, changing your energy is only the most basic. You still need to increase your strength. Muronyu nodded. Now, let more dark creatures appear. I'll fight them for 300 rounds. Jiyuchen nodded and waved his hand. Immediately, 2 dark creatures roared and pounced on him. Although Muronyu's body was rippling with dark energy, to the dark creatures, Muronyu was like the sun at night. It was so obvious. They could tell at a glance that he was not a dark creature. Thus, the 2 dark creatures roared as they pounced towards Muronyu. As for Jiyuchen was way too powerful, even though he had suppressed his cultivation level. Although he had suppressed his cultivation, the 2 dark creatures instinctively sensed danger from him. Therefore, he directly ignored Jiyuchen. This was also the result that Jiyuchen wanted to see. Good timing. Muronyu shouted and turned his energy into dark energy. He then raised it to the maximum and pounced on them. 1 against 2, they fought fiercely. Originally, Muronyu had a hard time dealing with 1 dark creature. However, after turning his energy into dark energy, his combat strength increased by at least 30%. Most importantly, the dark energy did not cause as much damage to him as before. Muronyu could even target the dark energy and pounce on it directly. One must know that before this, he had to avoid the dark energy. After half a day, Muronyu finally killed the 2 dark creatures. In the process, Muronyu also suffered a lot of damage. However, with the cleansing of the Tree of Life, he recovered quickly. If it was just 1 dark creature, Muronyu could finish it off in less than half a day. However, this was not enough because these dark creatures were of the lowest level. There were many more creatures that were stronger than these dark creatures. Muronyu's current combat strength was at the bottom of the dark creatures. Refine the crystal cores. Muronyu sat down with his legs crossed and began to refine the crystal cores of the 2 dark creatures. Now, the crystal cores of the dark creatures were easily refined by Muronyu. After refining the 2 crystal cores, Muronyu's strength had increased by another level. However, it was still not enough. Therefore, the battle continued after a few years. At this moment, there were tens of thousands of dark creatures in front of Muronyu. However, he charged in fearlessly and unleashed his power to fight against the tens of thousands of dark creatures. Sky Origin Stage, Second Sky. After several years of constant fighting and cultivation, Muronyu finally took a step forward and reached the second layer of the Heavenly Origin Stage. However, the tens of thousands of dark creatures in front of him were of the lowest level, which was Sky Origin Stage, First Sky. Therefore, Muronyu was not afraid of these dark creatures. Even tens of thousands of dark creatures were not enough for him to kill. However, after breaking through to Sky Origin Stage Second Sky, When Morong-Yu refined the crystal cores of the dark creatures of Sky, Origin Stage First Sky, the energy of the crystal cores was not useful to Morong-Yu. If the level was not high enough, no matter how much he refined, he could not increase Morong-Yu's strength. In this space, most of the dark creatures were Sky, Origin Stage First Sky. If he wanted to increase his strength, he had to enter the dark world. This was the only way to increase his strength. Chapter 23:59. Fourth brother, are you really going to enter the dark world to train? At the border between the original world and the dark world, Ji-Yuchen looked at Morong-Yu seriously and asked. After this period of training, Morong-Yu's strength had increased to the second sky of Heaven Origin. His strength had increased a lot compared to before. Plus, he was a true lord, so he was much stronger than ordinary second sky of Heaven Origin experts. But once he entered the dark world, Morong-Yu's realm would be at the bottom. Plus, in the dark world, Morong-Yu would be alone and helpless. Even if there was danger, even Ji-Yuchen, Lin Xing, and Qin Xian would not be able to save him in time. Morong-Yu nodded. The current situation was grim, and he couldn't afford to slowly cultivate. He had to increase his strength as fast as possible. Entering the dark world was the only way to increase his cultivation speed. All right, since you made up your mind, I won't say anything more. Ji-Yuchen nodded and tore open the thin film between the original world and the dark world. Although it was a thin film, it was very thin, but it was very sturdy. Ordinary dark creatures could not even tear it open. In the dark world, there were only a few who could tear open this thin film. Even if it was torn open, ordinary dark creatures could not pass through. When passing through this protective layer, they would be strangled by an unknown force. This thin film had become the last protective layer of the original world. It was because of this protective layer that the original world was able to maintain its stability. Otherwise, the original world would have been invaded by the dark creatures. But the dark creatures did not die when they invaded the original world. Many years ago, they had gathered a large number of dark creatures to attack the original world. Once this protective layer was breached, then the last barrier of the original world would disappear. Then, countless lives in the four worlds would be killed by the dark creatures. Rumble. As soon as a hole was torn in the protective barrier, an immense amount of dark energy gushed in like a geyser. Without the slightest hesitation, Morong-Yu took a step forward. In a flash, he'd already crossed the crack and appeared in the dark world. Fourth brother, take care. If you run into any danger, remember to call the three of us for help immediately. Ji-Yuchen's voice could be heard as the crack disappeared. The dark power was gray and black. After entering the dark world, Morong-Yu discovered that the dark world was like a night with dim stars. There was only a little bit of light. Turning around to look, the original world behind him was like a sun in the sky. It was so bright, even dazzling. Morong-Yu nodded at Ji-Yuchen, who hadn't left yet, and quickly disappeared into the darkness. On the other side, Ji-Yuchen turned around and left quickly after seeing Morong-Yu disappear. During this period of time, he was in charge of training Morong-Yu. The battlefield between the original world and the dark world was handed over to the eldest brother Lin Xing and the second brother Qin Xian. Presumably, the two of them were under a great deal of pressure, right? Therefore, after sending off Morong-Yu, Ji-Yuchen quickly rushed to the battlefield. The dark world was huge. It was several times the size of the original world. According to Ji-Yuchen, in the beginning, the dark world was relatively small. It was not even 1/10,000th the size of the original world. However, as the original world continued to grow, there were more and more life forms. As there were more life forms, their negative emotions naturally increased as well. As long as these negative emotions existed, they would be silently transported to the dark world. Therefore, the dark creatures in the dark world were able to thrive. Not only that, as the dark power increased, so did the dark creatures. Even the dark world continued to grow. After countless years of development, the dark world, which was originally less than 1/10,000th of the original world, gradually caught up with the original world and eventually surpassed it. However, the chaos was only so big. It would not grow or shrink. It was eternal. Therefore, as the dark world grew, the original world would become smaller. One would decrease, while the other would increase. Under such circumstances, even if the original world was not attacked or invaded by the dark world. However, after a long time, the original world would be compressed to an extremely small size and eventually disappear completely. Was this situation something that could be solved by destroying the dark world? Not necessarily, because even if all the existing dark creatures were killed. However, as long as the life forms in the original world were still there, the dark power would continue to accumulate, and then the dark creatures would appear. After many years of accumulation, it would become the current situation. Unless they eliminated the powerhouses to guard and killed every dark creature that appeared. Otherwise, there was no way to stop this situation. This method was desirable, but it only treated the symptoms and not the root cause. If they wanted to treat the root cause, they had to ensure that the people in the original world did not have a dark side in their hearts. In this way, if there was no dark power, even if there were dark creatures, because there was no dark power to sustain their life and cultivation, they would all naturally die. However, even Murong, you could not guarantee that he did not have a dark side, let alone the others. Therefore, this method was impossible. Then, would they have to fight for a long time? If that was the case, it would be too tiring. Especially Murong Yu and his brothers. Swoosh! Murong Yu did not travel far before he encountered a dark creature. The reason why there were no dark creatures at the border between the original world and the dark world was because the dark creatures did not like the light from the original world. Therefore, these dark creatures avoided the border between the two worlds. Without hesitation, Murong Yu pounced and started fighting. These were all dark creatures, enemies of his and the entire original world. Every dark creature killed would reduce the pressure on the original world. Bang! After a few punches and kicks, Murong Yu killed the dark creature. After all, he was at the second sky of Heaven Origin, and this dark creature was only at the lowest first sky of Heaven Origin. After plucking the dark creature's crystal core, Murong Yu continued to move forward. Therefore, he encountered a lot of dark creatures. The number of dark creatures was shocking. They were densely packed, as if they lived in groups. Ji Yuchen had told Murong Yu before. In the dark world, there were dark creatures everywhere. There was not even a place to lie down. One could imagine how dense the dark creatures were. How many dark creatures were there? As expected, the deeper Murong Yu went, the more dark creatures he encountered. However, the dark world was also a world where the strong preyed on the weak. There were dark creatures constantly fighting in order to plunder each other's crystal cores to increase their own strength. After all, the dark power here was too weak for them to increase their level. Chapter 2360. Just like how he hunted the angels back then, Murong Yu kept killing these dark creatures. Whenever Murong Yu obtained a dark creature's crystal core, he would immediately refine it. Hence, the more dark creatures he killed, the faster his speed increased. However, at this level, it was impossible to increase his strength by a large margin like before. However, there was still some improvement in his strength, even though it was slow. After a period of time, Murong Yu had reached the peak of the second sky of Heaven Origin after killing a large number of dark creatures. At this point, the dark creatures at the second sky of Heaven Origin could no longer help him to break through. Hence, Murong Yu could only kill dark creatures at the third sky of Heaven Origin or even higher levels to increase his strength. Hence, Murong Yu continued to go deeper. Change. After this period of time in the dark world, Murong Yu had a good understanding of dark creatures, dark world, and dark force. At this moment, after he changed, the energy in his body had completely turned into dark force. In fact, in the endless chaos, the chaotic energy was the highest level. The rest of the energy was derived from the chaotic energy. It could be said that the chaotic energy was the mother of all energy. Murong Yu was one of the 4 people who controlled the chaotic energy in the endless chaos. Murong Yu was very familiar with the chaotic energy. Hence, after he was familiar with the dark energy, the chaotic energy could completely turn into dark force. Moreover, as Murong Yu went deeper, he realized that the stronger the dark creatures were, the more solid their bodies were. He guessed that after reaching a higher level, these dark creatures would also turn into flesh and blood. However, Murong Yu wasn't sure yet. Hence, his real body was in the Hichu Luoshu, and he used the dark energy to form a body that was similar to the dark creatures. First sky of heaven origin. However, this level was too low. Murong Yu had to be careful even when he was in the dark world. Otherwise, he would be killed by other dark creatures at any time. After understanding from many sources, Murong Yu knew that the system of the dark creatures was the same as the original world. There were forces here as well. However, these forces were not the same as the sects and schools in the original world. There were no sects or clans in the dark world. There were only tribes of varying sizes. The dark world was made up of tribes. If you want to survive in the dark world, it's impossible to be alone. It's easy to be killed by other dark creatures. Then, you must first join a tribe. After reading some of the dark creatures' memories, Murong Yu knew that there were a few powerful tribes nearby. Poison Dragon Tribe, Morning Soul Tribe. These 2 tribes were one of the most powerful tribes in the area. Moreover, because of the fight for territory, the 2 tribes were having a war. Among them, the Poison Dragon Tribe had a military advisor with high intelligence, and he used troops like a deity. He beat the Morning Soul Tribe until they were like stray dogs, and they retreated in defeat. Then I'll join the Morning Souls Tribe first. Murong Yu pondered for a moment and made his decision. Although the Morning Souls Tribe was retreating in defeat, there were still some nails in a broken ship, and the Morning Souls Tribe's power was still there. Moreover, with Murong Yu's current ability, he would at most be cannon fodder if he joined the Poison Dragon Tribe. If he joined the Morning Souls Tribe, with Murong Yu's intelligence, he could totally help the Morning Souls Tribe defeat the Poison Dragon Tribe. Of course, it was still a problem to gain the trust of the Morning Souls Tribe. Although the dark creatures looked similar to humans, their intelligence was not as good as humans. This was the conclusion that Murong Yu came to after coming into contact with the dark creatures many times. If Murong Yu could get along well in the Morning Souls Tribe and become a higher up in the tribe, he could justifiably kill the dark creatures of other tribes to increase his ability. After all, every dark creature did that. Moreover, Murong Yu might be able to build his own force among the dark creatures. Then, he could mess up the dark world. After killing his way through, Murong Yu soon arrived outside the Morning Souls Tribe. Seeing Murong Yu walking over, the patrolling members of the Morning Souls Tribe immediately shouted to stop. Stop right there. Take another step forward and we'll kill you without mercy. Murong Yu stood still and looked at the dark creatures of the Morning Souls Tribe. He sneered, I'm here to help you destroy the Poison Dragon Tribe. To deal with these simple-minded dark creatures, Murong Yu did not need to beat around the bush. He only needed to get straight to the point. Otherwise, they might not understand Murong Yu's intention. Hearing this, the members of the Morning Souls Tribe were shocked. Some dark creatures even jumped over and surrounded Murong Yu. Speak. Are you a spy from the Poison Dragon Tribe? If you don't speak, I'll kill you right away, a dark creature roared. Murong Yu was not afraid. Are you idiots? If I'm a spy from the Poison Dragon Tribe, would I say it so openly? Hurry up and report to your overlord. Otherwise, your Morning Souls Tribe will be destroyed by the Poison Dragon Tribe. These dark creatures were frightened by Murong Yu. Therefore, someone quickly rushed back and reported to the overlord. Not long after, these people rushed back. The overlord has ordered for this kid to go in. Before he finished speaking, he took the lead and strode in. Murong Yu sneered in his heart and followed behind him. Low morale. This was what Murong Yu saw in the Morning Souls Tribe. The dark creatures of the Morning Souls Tribe had lost their morale and were listless. It was no wonder. In the battle with the Poison Dragon Tribe, the Morning Souls Tribe had never won and had been defeated. How could they have any morale? If this continued, the Morning Souls tribe would be destroyed by the other party. Some dark creatures had already thought of leaving the Morning Souls tribe. If they continued to stay, they would be killed sooner or later. I need a victory to raise their morale. Murong Yu thought in his heart as he entered the Overlord's Hall. Boom! As soon as Murong Yu stepped into the Overlord's Hall, a terrifying aura gushed from the front and suppressed Murong Yu's body, trying to suppress him. However, Murong Yu's original body was in Hichu Luoshu and was not affected at all. Therefore, his dark creature avatar stood on the spot without fear and was not under any control. Morning Souls Overlord, is this how you treat people who come to seek refuge with you? Moreover, I believe that without me, your Morning Souls tribe will be destroyed by the Poison Dragon tribe soon. With my existence, the Morning Souls tribe will avoid the possibility of being destroyed. On the contrary, I can lead the Morning Souls tribe to destroy the Poison Dragon tribe. Murong Yu looked coldly at the Morning Souls Overlord and said flatly. Chapter 2361. I don't believe you. Zhang Hun looked at Murong Yu and said indifferently. Zhang Hun tribe was a tribe that Zhang Hun created and developed by himself. Hence, even the name of the tribe was named after Zhang Hun. In reality, such situations were common. Most of the tribes in the Dark World were like that. Murong Yu smiled faintly and didn't say anything. He only glanced at the hall. On both sides of the hall, there were many experts from the Zhang Han tribe. These should be the core figures of the Zhang Han tribe, right? Murong Yu took a step forward and appeared in front of a dark creature. He pointed at him and said, "Move aside. I want to sit here." Hearing that, the dark creature was stunned at first. Then he was enraged. Terrifying, murderous intent exploded, and he was about to kill Murong Yu. With his strength, he could easily kill Murong Yu. After all, Murong Yu's clone was only at the first heaven of heaven origin. If you kill me, your Zhang Hun tribe will definitely be annihilated by the Poison Dragon tribe, Murong Yu said coldly. Instantly, the dark creature didn't dare to make a move. Instead, he looked at Zhang Hun. If Murong Yu really had the ability, if he could kill Murong Yu, then, before the Poison Dragon tribe could kill him, Zhang Hun would kill him with a punch. Zhang Hun didn't say anything. Hence, the dark creature didn't know what Zhang Hun meant. Hence, he stood up and gave his seat to Murong Yu. Murong Yu sat down casually as though he was at home. Arrogant. Arrogant. Now, including Zhang Hun, everyone couldn't figure out Murong Yu's background. Murong Yu was too arrogant and egotistical. Arrogant and egotistical people always had a reason to be arrogant and egotistical. They either had to rely on their own backing or their own abilities. Then, did Murong Yu rely on his backing, or did he have the ability to be arrogant and egotistical? Everyone was unsure. After sitting down, Murong Yu looked at Zhang Hun and said, "I didn't want you to believe me from the start. However, what I said is the truth. You just need to verify it." How do we verify it? An important figure of the Morning Soul tribe asked in a deep voice. It's very simple. As long as you can give me a team to lead, I can prove myself, Murong Yu said calmly. Everyone was silent. Even Departed Soul didn't say anything. How do you expect us to believe you? What if you're a spy from the Poison Dragon tribe? Wouldn't the army we handed over to you fall into your trap? That's impossible, another dark creature said coldly. It was obvious that he did not trust Murong Yu. Murong Yu looked at the dark creature as if he was looking at an idiot. Are you an idiot? Are you sure you want me to lead an army? I don't need much, just 1 million. 1 million people to your Morning Souls tribe is just the tip of the iceberg, right? Murong Yu understood it very well. The Morning Souls tribe had at least 100 million people. 1 million people to them was really just the tip of the iceberg. Even if 1 million people are killed by me, the Morning Souls tribe won't feel the pain. Losing 1 million people is not a loss to you. However, you can use 1 million people to test me and let me prove myself. Even more, 1 million people can save the Morning Souls tribe. I'm done. After saying those words, Murong Yu closed his eyes and began to meditate. He was not afraid of Departed Soul and the others. Hearing Chu Yun's words, everyone present was tempted. Yes, 1 million people was really not a lot. However, if they could use 1 million people to save the Morning Souls tribe, it was worth a try. Departed Soul pondered. After a while, he slammed the table in front of him and made a decision. All right, I've decided to give you 1 million soldiers. However, how will you prove yourself? Muronyu slowly opened his eyes. I can give you a victory to raise your morale. Moreover, in this battle, I can kill at least 10 million people from the Poison Dragon tribe. All right, I'm called Muronyu. At this time, Muronyu introduced himself. The Dark World was similar to the original world. There were various surnames. And Muronyu's name was very common. Moreover, he didn't need to hide his real name, because they didn't know that he was one of the original world's 4 true lords. Even if they knew, with their intelligence, they wouldn't be able to link the two of them together. I want a specific plan. Although Departed Soul decided to give 1 million people to Muronyu, he still didn't believe it. Muronyu simply smiled and looked at Sanghan. My lord, you only need to give me the authority to command 1 million troops. After 1 day, I can let you see the victory report. Perhaps you can also come with me. Okay, I'll give you 1 million soldiers. Immediately go and gather 1 million soldiers and give them to Muronyu. Departed Soul immediately ordered a dark creature to gather the soldiers. Immediately, he took Muronyu and left the Lord's Hall. During this process, the Departed Soul tribe's reaction was very fast. The Morning Souls tribe reacted very quickly. By the time Muronyu and the others left, 1 million soldiers had already gathered together. After Departed Soul said a few words, these 1 million people completely belonged to Muronyu. Of course, this was only temporary. In the tribe, ordinary soldiers were absolutely obedient to the military authority. As long as Muronyu had the military authority, he wasn't afraid that these people wouldn't listen. Let's go. After taking over the military authority, Muronyu led the 1 million soldiers and left in a grandiose manner. Sir Overlord, if you want to kill more people from the Poison Dragon tribe, you can lead more soldiers behind me. After my great victory, you can follow up with your victory. Before leaving, Muronyu smiled and said to Departed Soul. Departed Soul nodded and watched as Muronyu led the 1 million soldiers and quickly left. Lord, what should we do? Are we really going to lead the army? After Muronyu left, a dark creature asked Departed Soul. Perhaps this is that kid's scheme. They want to lure us out and then catch us all in one fell swoop. Another dark creature said worriedly. Gather the army and set off immediately. Departed Soul waved his hand and gave the order. Everyone was shocked and hurriedly tried to dissuade him. But Departed Soul was abnormally firm. Even if this is a trap, we must jump in and have a life and death battle with the Poison Dragon tribe. Either he dies or we die. On the other side, Muronyu led the 1 million dark creature army, and after leaving the Departed Soul tribe, they began to rapidly march. They rushed towards their destination. The reason why Muronyu wasn't afraid to prove himself was because he already had a card up his sleeve. Chapter 2362. The territories of the two tribes were quite large, and they bordered each other. However, as the saying goes, a mountain cannot accommodate 2 tigers. No matter if it was the Poison Dragon tribe or the Morning Soul tribe, both of them wanted to annihilate or annex each other and seize the other's territory. In the beginning, the two sides hadn't started fighting yet. But not long ago, the war finally broke out. As for the Morning Souls tribe, their strength was still a little lacking, and they were forced to retreat. Therefore, under the continuous attacks of the Poison Dragon tribe, the Morning Souls tribe's territory was continuously invaded. At this moment, more than 80% of the Death Soul tribe's territory had already belonged to the Poison Dragon tribe. The Morning Souls tribe was about to reach a dead end. It was also because of this that Sanghan said that he would fight to the death with the Poison Dragon tribe. Of course, Murongyu's appearance meant that the Morning Souls tribe would not be exterminated. He still needed to use the Morning Souls tribe to complete his grand plan. Due to the invasion of the Morning Souls tribe, almost all of the dark creatures in the Poison Dragon tribe, other than those who were guarding the old nest, were mobilized. A large army of the Poison Dragon tribe was stationed not far away from the Morning Souls tribe. This army had at least 100 million soldiers. It was equivalent to the entire Death Soul tribe. Other than dealing with the Morning Soul tribe, the Poison Dragon tribe was also constantly attacking the surrounding small tribes. After conquering these small tribes, the Poison Dragon tribe incorporated all these dark creatures into the Poison Dragon tribe. Therefore, the number of dark creatures in the Poison Dragon tribe was increasing. There was strength in numbers. On the other hand, the number of dark creatures in the Morning Soul tribe was dwindling. Under such circumstances, coupled with the continuous defeats, the morale of the Morning Souls tribe was greatly affected. It would be strange if the Morning Souls tribe could win. The 100 million people of the Poison Dragon tribe were camping in a huge plain without any order. It was quite messy. On the other hand, Murong-Yu led the million people of the Morning Soul tribe to hide in a mountain range not far away. They were spying on the people of the Poison Dragon tribe from afar. "My lord, are we really going to attack them? Isn't this the same as courting death?" A dark creature walked over to Murong-Yu's side and asked in a trembling voice. This dark creature's strength was not bad. It was even stronger than Murong-Yu. But at this moment, his face was filled with fear. In fact, it wasn't just him. The 100 dark creatures of the Morning Soul tribe all had the same reaction. From the looks of it, they were indeed scared of being beaten up. Moreover, 1,000,000 people against 100 million people was a difference of 100 times. How could they not be afraid? After all, even if they were to fight one-on-one, the Morning Souls tribe would still be defeated. In their opinion, this time, they were definitely courting death. Die? You are all elites of the Ghost tribe. Why would I send you to your deaths? Murong-Yu looked at the dark creature in front of him and laughed. His voice was not loud, but it rang clearly in the ears of the 1,000,000 dark creatures. Murong-Yu wanted to fight his way into the Morning Souls tribe, and he had to win this battle. In addition, he also needed a team, and these 1,000,000 people were just right for him to use. Therefore, in this battle, he wanted to ensure that these 1,000,000 people had as few casualties as possible. We are all elites of the Morning Souls tribe. Hearing this, the dark creatures trembled and looked at Murong-Yu with gleaming eyes. In the Morning Soul tribe, they had never been called elites by others. Even departed souls would never praise them. You must all be elites of the Morning Souls tribe. Otherwise, why would I choose you to attack these people from the Poison Dragon tribe? If you weren't elites, will we be able to win this battle? Tell me, are you elites? Chuyin said in a deep voice. We are all elites. All the dark creatures were excited. Dark creatures were dark creatures after all. They had limited intelligence and were simple. Just a few words of encouragement from Murong-Yu had caused tears to well up in his eyes. He couldn't wait to submit to Murong-Yu. Murong-Yu believed that if they could win this battle, these people would definitely be convinced by him. Then, these people would become his subordinates, his soldiers. They would carry out Murong-Yu's orders faithfully to complete his grand plan. I know that many people look down on you now, but it's okay. We will use this victory to tell those who look down on you that you are all elites, that you are all powerhouses. Murong-Yu encouraged them again. There was no need for any emotional words. These dark creatures were already motivated to kill their way over. However, if they were to kill their way over, not to mention 1,000,000, even 10 million wouldn't be enough to kill them. You come here. Murong-Yu called a few captains over and whispered his plan to them. If it was before, these people would definitely not carry out Murong-Yu's orders. However, after being instigated by Murong-Yu, these people had basically become docile and obedient. Immediately, these captains led their teams out of the mountain range and charged straight towards the Poison Dragon tribe's encampment. These people did not attack. After arriving near the Poison Dragon tribe's encampment, they began to curse wildly. The Poison Dragon tribe's people were all simple-minded people. Seeing this, they were all furious and quickly sent out troops to chase after these people. The dark creatures from the Morning Souls tribe followed Murong-Yu's orders and quickly retreated. On the other hand, the Poison Dragon tribe's people chased closely behind. However, The Morning Souls tribe's people who attacked this time were all dark creatures with higher strength. Therefore, after running all the way, they lured the Poison Dragon tribe's pursuers into the mountain range without any casualties. Under Murong Yu's arrangement, the rest of the Morning Souls tribe's people were already lying in ambush. When they saw the Poison Dragon tribe's dark creatures who rushed in foolishly, these people were still happily chasing after them. They did not even think about an ambush. Kill. After luring the enemy deep, Murong Yu gave the order. Therefore, the 1,000,000 dark creatures from the Morning Souls tribe attacked. They directly surrounded the Poison Dragon tribe's hundreds of thousands of people and blasted out waves of power in all directions. However, they did not get close. Suddenly encountering an ambush, these dark creatures from the Poison Dragon tribe who only knew how to fight head-on were directly stunned. Then, one by one, they scattered and fled. There was no organization and no formation. After they scattered, they became the targets of the Morning Souls tribe's dark creatures. Therefore, the dark creatures from the Poison Dragon tribe were killed one after another. Seeing this scene, the dark creatures from the Morning Souls tribe poured out the resentment and anger that had accumulated in their hearts for a long time. Each of them was exceptionally brave and performed exceptionally well. The result was that the Poison Dragon tribe's people were unable to withstand a single blow and died in large numbers. Chapter 2363. After luring the enemy a few times, the Morning Souls tribe finally killed millions of dark creatures from the Poison Dragon tribe easily. As for the Morning Souls tribe, there were almost no casualties. Under Murong Yu's arrangement, these dark creatures basically attacked from afar and wouldn't get close at all. Therefore, it was difficult for them to die. During this process, Murong Yu put in a lot of effort. He even dashed into the dark creatures a few times and launched the most violent attacks on the dark creatures from the Poison Dragon tribe. Seeing that Murong Yu, who was their leader, was so brave, the dark creatures from the Morning Souls tribe roared loudly. They swept away their dejection and discouragement from before and unleashed stronger attacks. In fact, Murong Yu wasn't doing this for the dark creatures to see. Of course, it was also an important reason to show off to the dark creatures from the Morning Souls tribe. Most importantly, Murong Yu devoured and refined a large number of dark creatures to increase his abilities. Whether it was entering the Morning Souls tribe or leading the army to the war, Murong Yu only had one goal: to increase his cultivation base. Everything he did in the dark world was to increase his cultivation base. To put it in a more noble way, it was all for the sake of the original world. He wanted to eliminate all the dark creatures. However, the dark creatures that were charging at them were not very powerful. However, no matter how small a mosquito was, it was still meat. Murong Yu didn't waste any of it. Sir, the people from the Poison Dragon tribe aren't willing to come out now. After luring and killing over 10 million dark creatures from the Poison Dragon tribe, the people from the Poison Dragon tribe finally reacted and no one came out. No matter how low the intelligence of the dark creatures was, they would have realized what was going on if 10 million people didn't come back. Perhaps they still couldn't think of a way to eliminate Murong Yu and his people. Therefore, they shut themselves in. In that case, there were still 90 million people in the Poison Dragon tribe. If they didn't come out, would Murong Yu take the initiative to attack the city? That was impossible. Murong Yu and his 1 million people wouldn't be able to cause any trouble if they rushed in. Hence, Murong Yu ordered the dark creatures in the Morning Souls tribe to stay put before he could think of a solution. After going through so many battles, the dark creatures were full of admiration for Murong Yu. It could be said that the reason why they obeyed before was because of Murong Yu's military power. Now, they sincerely admired him. Now, even if Murong Yu did not have military power, as long as he gave an order, these people would obey unconditionally. This was because Murong Yu had already conquered their hearts. My lord, that's how it is. Murong Yu had already killed over 10 million people from the Poison Dragon tribe. Now, the Poison Dragon tribe's people don't dare to come out. far behind Murong Yu and the others. Zhang Han led the entire tribe's army and slowly advanced. During this process, spies constantly reported the progress of the battle to Lost Soul. When they knew that Murong Yu had killed 10 million people with his 1 million people, they were all stunned. When this matter was spread out, the morale of the Morning Souls tribe army, which was originally lifeless, gradually recovered a little. Murong Yu seems to be quite capable. Lost Soul couldn't help but praise. He was obviously very satisfied with Murong Yu. My lord, this still hasn't eliminated the suspicion that Murong Yu is a spy from the Poison Dragon tribe. Perhaps this is the Poison Dragon tribe's plot to use the death of 10 million people in exchange for my lord's trust in Murong Yu. An expert from the Poison Dragon tribe said in a deep voice. Lost Soul nodded. This guy was also a treacherous and cunning person. How could he easily trust Murong Yu? On the other hand, the 36 stratagems kept circling in Murong Yu's mind. He was thinking about what kind of stratagem could be used to wipe out the Poison Dragon tribe's dark creatures in one fell swoop. Cross the sea by deception? Sneak in? However, these stratagems weren't very practical. This was because the difference in strength between the two sides was too great. 90 million against 1 million, it was a difference of 90 times. No matter how ingenious the stratagem was, it would be difficult to wipe out the Poison Dragon tribe's dark creatures. However, the Poison Dragon tribe closed their doors and didn't come out. It would be great if we have more troops. Murong Yu thought in his heart. At this moment, a figure shot out from behind and quickly landed in front of Murong Yu. Sir, my lord invites you. It turned out to be a messenger from the Morning Souls tribe. Murong Yu furrowed his brows and immediately followed the messenger, arriving at the rear of the Morning Souls tribe's army. Murong Yu, if I hand over all the soldiers of the Morning Souls tribe to you, can you wipe out the Poison Dragon tribe's 90 million people? Before Murong Yu even got close, Lost Soul said loudly. Hearing this, Murong Yu was overjoyed. If he could command the Morning Souls tribe's army, wiping out the Poison Dragon tribe wouldn't be a problem at all. No problem at all. In half a month, I can wipe out all the dark creatures. Murong Yu immediately agreed. With this army of over 100 million, why would he need to worry about wiping out the Poison Dragon tribe's dark creatures? Lost Soul was rather straightforward. Under Murong Yu's confident guarantee, he directly handed over part of the military authority to Murong Yu. Handing over all the military authority to Murong Yu? That was impossible. What Murong Yu currently had was only temporary military power. The one who controlled the final military authority was still Lost Soul. As long as he had enough troops, he could use any stratagem. On the other hand, Murong Yu used the most primitive and violent method. He directly started attacking. Kill. The dark creatures that covered the mountains and plains let out earth-shattering roars as they charged towards the Poison Dragon tribe. Of course, this wasn't an ordinary attack. Under Murong Yu's guidance, a group of the strongest warriors of the Morning Souls tribe formed the Decapitation tribe and charged at the strongest side. There weren't many people in this army, but they gathered the strongest existences in the Morning Souls tribe apart from Lost Soul. In normal battles, it was impossible for all of these people to gather together to fight. Under Murong Yu's arrangement, these people formed an army and exploded with terrifying power. It was like a sharp knife that directly stabbed into the Poison Dragon tribe's heart. Wherever they passed, not a single dark creature was their opponent. They were all torn into pieces. Under Murong Yu's command, this army didn't linger and directly flew towards the Poison Dragon tribe's army. To catch bandits, first catch the ringleader. Murong Yu planned to wipe out the Poison Dragon tribe's highest authority and all the higher-ups here. In this way, the remaining dark creatures would fall into chaos without a fight. At that time, Murong Yu would be able to pursue and wipe them out in one fell swoop. Chapter 2364. Kill. The people that Murong Yu led were almost the most powerful powerhouses in the Morning Souls tribe. In the war with the Poison Dragon tribe, although the Morning Souls tribe lost a large number of dark creatures and many of their top powerhouses. However, as compared to the top dark creatures, the Morning Souls tribe was relatively well preserved. Before this, the Poison Dragon tribe and the Morning Souls tribe were on par. In other words, the top powerhouses in both tribes were similar. But now, the 100 million dark creatures that Murong-Yu was attacking weren't all of the Poison Dragon tribe's forces. They were only the dark creatures that the Poison Dragon tribe had absorbed after conquering the nearby tribes. Although there was no lack of top powerhouses, it was far from enough for the Morning Souls tribe to attack in full force. As such, Murong-Yu's group didn't hesitate to kill their way into the main tent. At that moment, the higher-ups of the Poison Dragon tribe finally reacted. They rushed out and charged toward Murong-Yu's side. Kill them. Along the way, the top powerhouses of the Morning Souls tribe were extremely excited. Their low morale had long been boosted. At that moment, they were in a killing frenzy. Moreover, they had more powerhouses than the Poison Dragon tribe to begin with. Therefore, as soon as the top powerhouses from both sides came into contact, the powerhouses of the Poison Dragon tribe fell one after another. In the blink of an eye, more than 1/10 of the powerhouses had fallen. Murong-Yu did not attack. Instead, he blended in with the powerhouses of the Morning Souls tribe. He performed his technique to the extreme and devoured the crystal cores of the dark creatures that died around him. Due to his identity, the top powerhouses of the Morning Souls tribe were intentionally or unintentionally protecting him. This was because Murong-Yu had won the respect of these people in the previous battles. In addition to the fact that he went straight to the main tent this time, it was an initial victory. Therefore, many people knew that Murong-Yu was a talent. Whether the Morning Souls tribe could come back to life depended on Murong-Yu. Therefore, everyone was intentionally or unintentionally protecting Murong-Yu. They even knew that Murong-Yu was weak, so after killing the dark creature, they sent the crystal core of the dark creature to Murong-Yu. It could be said that Murong-Yu was calmly cultivating in the midst of an army of 10,000. Moreover, the effect was quite good. It could be said that Murong-Yu's strength was increasing with every passing moment. However, at his current level, Murong-Yu couldn't break through as quickly as before, even if he had a large number of dark creature cores to refine. However, this was just the beginning. There would be plenty of time in the future. As long as Murong-Yu continued to hang around here, he would eventually reach the heights of Ji Yuchen and the others. Furthermore, Murong-Yu believed that the time it would take him to reach Ji Yuchen and the other two's heights would be shorter and faster. The experts of the Poison Dragon tribe fell at an extremely fast speed. The two sides had not been in contact for long, but more than half of the top experts had already fallen. Seeing that they were no match for the Morning Souls tribe, the remaining people were frightened right away. Immediately, they turned around and fled in all directions. Where do you think you're going? All of you, stay here. Seeing that they were fleeing, the people of the Morning Souls tribe immediately chased after them and split up. Don't split up. Maintain the formation and charge back and forth in the Poison Dragon tribe's camp. Strive to kill as many enemies as possible in the shortest amount of time. If you can't kill them this time, strive to kill them next time. Murong-Yu immediately shouted when he saw that everyone was going to chase after them. The powerhouses of the Morning Souls tribe paused when they heard him, but they did not split up to chase after them in the end. Instead, they followed Murong-Yu's instructions, or rather, orders, and formed into a group. Then, they charged into the Poison Dragon tribe's military camp. Everywhere they passed, none of the creatures of the Poison Dragon tribe were a match for them, and they died in large numbers. It was only a few rounds of charging back and forth, but the Poison Dragon tribe's camp, which was already in a mess, became even more chaotic. After knowing that their higher-ups were killed or had escaped, these people lost their will to fight and began to flee. At that moment, the morale of the Poison Dragon tribe side had hit rock bottom, while the morale of the Morning Souls tribe side was high. Under such circumstances, the Poison Dragon tribe side could not even withstand a single blow and was quickly defeated. Corpses were everywhere and blood flowed like a river. On the contrary, very few dark creatures from the Morning Souls tribe died. After half a day, the battle cries that soared into the sky gradually decreased. The Poison Dragon tribe side had already suffered a crushing defeat. The remaining remnants of the defeated army were fleeing in all directions in panic. Chase them for 100 million miles. Moronyu roared. Suddenly, the top powerhouses of the Morning Souls tribe finally split up. Each of them led an army and began a crazy chase. 3 days later, in the Morning Souls tribe. At that moment, the entire Morning Souls tribe was jubilant, and it was a big banquet. Each of the dark creatures was extremely excited. Aha! I killed a few hundred enemies this time. How many did you guys kill? I only killed a few dozen. Sigh, I'm not strong enough. I only killed a dozen. However, I felt that it was very enjoyable. This time, we swept away the previous defeats. If we continue to maintain such a great victory in the future, our Morning Souls tribe can at least become one of the most powerful tribes in the Dark World, if not the entire Dark World. All of this is thanks to Moronyu. If it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have this great victory at all. I'm afraid that we would have been annihilated by the Poison Dragon tribe. This time, we killed 90 million people in the Poison Dragon tribe. Just thinking about it makes me feel good. Come, brothers, let's drink. The entire Poison Dragon tribe was talking about this great victory, and the name that appeared the most was Moronyu. Now, Moronyu was in the limelight in the Morning Souls tribe. He had even changed the Morning Souls overlord. As the saying goes, one's achievements overshadowed the master. If such a subordinate was taken back, the master would be suspicious. However, Moronyu did not have such concerns now. At least for the time being, the Morning Souls tribe would not be suspicious of Moronyu. This was because he still needed Moronyu to conquer the world for him. Now, I officially appoint Moronyu as the Grand Marshal of the 3 armies of the Morning Souls tribe. After 3 rounds of wine and 5 dishes, the Morning Souls tribe suddenly announced loudly. The people in the hall were the middle and upper echelons of the Morning Souls tribe. Hearing this, everyone was startled at first, but they quickly reacted. Congratulations, Moronyu. Congratulations, Grand Marshal. Everyone congratulated one after another. Moronyu's face also revealed a smile as he raised his cup to everyone. He did not decline because this was his goal. Now, he had just achieved his goal. Moreover, this was obtained by relying on his own ability. This was obtained by killing 90 million dark creatures in the Poison Dragon tribe. Chapter 2365. Men, give all the crystal nuclei from the Poison Dragon tribe to the Grand Marshal. After everyone was happy, Zhang Hun laughed heartily and ordered his men to bring the crystal nuclei from the victory. He wanted to reward all the crystal nuclei to Moronyu. Hearing that, not only was Moronyu shocked, but the others were also shocked. This time, the Zhang Hun tribe killed a total of 90 million people. Although there were many people who devoured the enemy's crystal nuclei during the battle, there were still tens of millions of crystal nuclei that were not absorbed. Other than the crystal nuclei of the dark creatures that were killed in the Poison Dragon tribe, the crystal nuclei of the dark creatures that died in the Zhang Hun tribe were also collected. A total of 60 million dark creature crystal nuclei. When Moronyu saw the crystal nuclei that were given to him as a reward, he was shocked. However, he did not decline and accepted it with a smile. Thank you for your reward, Overlord. Moronyu immediately said to Zhang Hun with a grateful look. In fact, how could he be grateful? In fact, he deserved these crystal nuclei. If it was not for him, Zhang Hun would have been like a stray dog chased by the Poison Dragon tribe. How could he kill so many people? The Grand Marshal is intelligent, but he is too weak. Therefore, I will reward him with all these crystal nuclei so that the Grand Marshal can increase his cultivation quickly. Do you have any objections? After giving all the crystal nuclei to Moronyu, Zhang Hun asked loudly. This is what the Grand Marshal deserves. Everyone quickly said in unison. Who dared to say no? Even if they were dissatisfied, they did not dare to show it. It was obvious that Moronyu was favored. Moreover, they respected Moronyu very much. After all, Murong Yu's arrival allowed them to turn the situation around. Grand Marshal, what's the plan next? Zhang Hun seemed to trust Murong Yu very much. Hence, after appointing Murong Yu as the Grand Marshal, he immediately asked Murong Yu about his future plans. Murong Yu was already prepared, so he slowly said, "Strike while the iron is hot and destroy the Poison Dragon tribe." You want to destroy the Poison Dragon tribe? Hearing Murong Yu's words, everyone present, including Wuhan, was shocked. Not to mention that they were beaten up by the Poison Dragon tribe like stray dogs and had to hide everywhere. Even if that wasn't the case, they still wanted to annex the Poison Dragon tribe. Therefore, each and every one of them looked at Murong Yu with fervent gazes. Grand Marshal, do you have a plan? Murong Yu smiled mysteriously. Heaven's secrets cannot be revealed. He paused for a moment before he continued. I still need to do some research first. We must strive to eliminate the Poison Dragon tribe in one fell swoop. Grand Marshal, are you confident? Although we killed 90 million people from the Poison Dragon tribe, it was only 1/10 of them. Even so, their numbers are 10 times more than ours. One of the higher-ups said in a deep voice. The others also nodded. At the same time, they looked at Murong Yu with burning eyes. Murong Yu smiled confidently. As long as we are united, as long as you listen to my command, I have the confidence to destroy the Poison Dragon tribe. However, Murong Yu didn't say exactly how to do it. The higher-ups of a Morning Souls tribe were so anxious that they kept scratching their heads. The celebration banquet lasted for 3 days. During these 3 days, even the patrolling soldiers of a Morning Souls tribe were eating to their heart's content. There was no need to cycle at all. In the beginning, everyone was quite dissatisfied with Murong Yu's order. They were afraid of being attacked by the Poison Dragon tribe. However, after 10 days, no one came close. Not to mention the Poison Dragon tribe's army. Even the Poison Dragon tribe scouts were nowhere to be seen. Murong Yu was really clever. Everyone couldn't help but admire Murong Yu even more. In fact, this was very normal. He had appeared out of nowhere and killed 90 million people of the Poison Dragon tribe with lightning speed. This had already suppressed the Poison Dragon tribe. The Poison Dragon tribe definitely wanted to kill him and destroy the Morning Souls tribe. However, before the situation was clear, they definitely wouldn't act rashly. During this period of time, the Poison Dragon tribe would definitely use all their strength to investigate Murong Yu's matter. Once the investigation was almost done, they would definitely act. Grand Marshal, what's the plan for now? Morning Souls asked Murong Yu after he stopped him. Murong Yu smiled mysteriously. Wait and see. Morning Souls looked at Murong Yu with some confusion. Didn't Grand Marshal say to strike while the iron is hot? Why are you waiting and seeing? We need to strike while the iron is hot, but we also need to wait and see. Morning Souls, don't worry. I will definitely help you destroy the Poison Dragon tribe. However, before that, I need to increase my strength first. Increasing his strength was the most important thing. Of course, destroying the Poison Dragon tribe was also an urgent matter. Therefore, Murong Yu bid farewell to Morning Souls and returned to his territory. Grand Marshal, when Murong Yu arrived at his territory, many people were already in formation to welcome him. Apart from these people, there were close to 1 million people patrolling or building in his territory. With a sweep of his divine telekinesis, Murong Yu realized that these people were the 1 million people who followed him in the beginning. However, there were less than 1 million people now. There were about 900,000 people. After all, no matter how careful Murong Yu was, he couldn't completely preserve his strength in the war. After the war, these people were transferred by Morning Souls and became Murong Yu's personal guards. Murong Yu naturally wouldn't reject this. Everyone has worked hard. Go do what you need to do. Murong Yu waved his hand with a smile and dismissed these people. After that, he entered his room. After setting up some formations in the room, he entered the Hichu Luo Shu. Time acceleration. Murong Yu immediately accelerated the flow of time to the maximum. He sat cross-legged in the Hichu Luo Shu. Beside him, there were 60 million dark creature crystal nuclei. Refine. Murong Yu immediately began to refine it. Therefore, a large number of dark creature crystal nuclei were refined. Streams of pure dark force surged like a torrent and rushed into Murong Yu's body. Suddenly, Murong Yu's strength was increasing at a speed that was visible to the naked eye. Originally, Murong Yu's cultivation was at the second heavenly layer of sky origin stage. But in less than 2 hours, his cultivation had risen to the peak of the second heavenly layer of sky origin stage. Not long after, he broke through with a boom. Third sky of sky origin stage. At this moment, there was still a large number of dark creature crystal nuclei that had not been refined. Therefore, Murong Yu didn't rush out and continued to refine the dark creature crystal nuclei. Chapter 2366. Time accelerated and 10,000 years passed in the blink of an eye. A total of 60 million dark creature cores. Among these cores, there were dark creatures at the first and second layer of sky origin, and there were also dark creatures at the ninth layer of sky origin. However, there were no great evolution cores after the sky origin stage. After all, in this place, although the Poison Dragon tribe and the Soul Lost tribe were powerful, there were only a few great evolution experts in the two tribes. In this battle, it was naturally impossible for a Grand Deduction stage dark life form to fall. However, if he continued to develop like this, killing Grand Deduction level dark life forms would not be a problem at all. After Murong Yu refined a total of 60 million dark creature cores, his strength also broke through again and again. He had already risen from the third layer of sky origin to the sixth layer of sky origin. There was no helping it, although there were more cores, and there were also quite a number of cores from dark creatures at the ninth layer of sky origin. However, Murong Yu was originally a big eater. The resources he needed were at least 10 times or 100 times more than others. Therefore, to be able to rise to the sixth layer of sky origin was already quite terrifying. In other words, after joining the Soul Lost tribe to command the second battle, Chu Yun had risen by a total of 4 small realms. This speed of improvement was quite terrifying. However, in the days to come, he would not be able to break through so easily. After all, the higher the realm, the harder it was to break through. The resources needed would also be more, especially Murong Yu, this big eater. However, as long as he could gain a foothold in the dark world, then his realm could steadily rise. He believed that if he continued to be so smooth, he would need less time to reach the level of Ji Yuchen and the other two. After stabilizing his current realm, Murong Yu withdrew the Hichu Luo Shu. The original body was still in the Hichu Luo Shu, carried by the clone. In order to not appear too shocking, Chu Yun only raised the clone's realm to the 5th layer of sky origin stage. Although it rose by 2 or 3 small realms, it was not as shocking as 4 small realms. Soul Loss and the others should be able to accept it. Furthermore, Murong Yu's speed of improvement was what the Grand Marshal of the Morning Soul Tribe should have. If he was too slow, it wouldn't match his status. Grand Marshal, bad news. As soon as Murong Yu left the room, a dark creature rushed over and said in a panic, "Why are you so flustered?" Murong Yu looked at the dark creature in front of him calmly. "Grand Marshal, according to our intelligence, the Poison Dragon tribe's army of 500 million has already charged over. They will reach our Morning Soul tribe in less than a day." Now, the Lord was gathering everyone to discuss how to deal with the situation. Fortunately, the Grand Marshal came out of seclusion in time. "Please quickly go to the main hall to discuss matters. Is the Poison Dragon army coming? It's only 500 million. What's the rush?" Murong Yu did not panic. On the contrary, a smile appeared on his face. The Grand Marshal was still able to laugh when the army was at his doorstep. As expected of the Grand Marshal, seeing Murong Yu's performance, his personal soldiers could not help but admire him greatly. All of them respected Murong Yu even more. However, although Murong Yu did not care about this matter, he still used his speed and flew towards the Morning Soul tribe. If the Morning Soul tribe made a decision rashly, all his efforts would be in vain. Before he reached the main hall, You could already hear the noise from the main hall. It sounded like a street market. After listening carefully, some people advocated to take the initiative to fight, while others advocated to avoid the enemy's attack. Some people wanted to wait for the Grand Marshal to come out of seclusion before making a decision. Everyone, why is this place so lively? Yu took a step into the hall, swept his gaze across the crowd, and laughed mischievously. Seeing Yu appear, everyone, including the Morning Soul tribe, heaved a sigh of relief. It was obvious that after Yu's 2 consecutive victories, everyone started to rely on him. They felt that Yu would definitely have a way to solve this matter. Grand Marshal, you're finally here. The Poison Dragon tribe is coming with great momentum. How should we deal with them? Someone asked anxiously. Yu didn't reply. Instead, he sat down in his seat and slowly said, "You don't need to be nervous. I already know about the Poison Dragon tribe situation. This time, I will not let them return." Not return, although the crowd already believed in Yu's words. Yu's words were still a mystery. However, the Poison Dragon tribe did not send 50 million people, but 500 million. It was 5 times more than the Morning Soul tribe. Moreover, they came with the fury of revenge. How could they resist? Grand Marshal, do you have any ideas? The Morning Soul tribe looked at Yu in disbelief. It was not that he did not believe in Yu, but Yu's tone was too big. Yu smiled slightly. He first swept a glance over everyone, then slowly said, "I wonder if everyone has heard of array formations? Array formations are a kind of method of the human world. Our dark world has it too. But most of them are rather superficial and have no effect," a dark creature said solemnly. "Haha, it's good that you know. Before this, I inadvertently obtained a human powerhouse's memory. Although that person's strength was nothing much, he had many memories of the human world civilization. With regards to array formations, I also dabbled a little. This time, I'll use array formations to make the Poison Dragon tribe's 500 million army not return. However, this time, I need 100 million crystal cores." In the end, Yu even added a sentence. Everyone looked at Yu. Only then did they discover that Yu was already at the 5th firmament heaven origin realm. This speed was simply heaven-defying. Haha, forget about 100 million. If you can annihilate the 500 million invading Poison Dragon tribe, I'll give all of their crystal cores to you also isn't an issue, Morning Soul said with a loud laugh. One can't be too greedy. I only need 100 million, and that's enough. I urgently need to increase my strength right now. If in the future, I won't need so many crystal cores anymore, Yu explained. He was afraid that these dark creatures present would be displeased. If they did not obey his orders during a great battle, that would be a tragedy. All right, it's settled then. If Grand Marshal annihilates the 500 million enemy, I'll still have other rewards. Right now, whatever arrangements Grand Marshal has, feel free to give the order. Our Morning Soul tribe, everyone will listen to your orders, Morning Soul said solemnly. Yu nodded his head. Right now, time was pressing and indeed could not be delayed. Hence, he started deploying troops and deploying generals, setting up array formations on the Poison Dragon tribe's invading enemy's path. Chapter 2367. In the original world, anyone who cultivated would more or less know about formations. As for those array masters, they knew even more. Yu was a grandmaster among grandmasters of array formations. He knew countless array formations. However, in the dark world, there was no need for him to use those profound formations. That was because the formations in the dark world were too shallow. All they needed to do was to use some simple formations to kill many dark creatures. At that moment, Yu had already transferred some ordinary killing formations and trapping formations into the memories of some of the higher-ups in the Soul Lost tribe. The 500 million strong army of the Poison Dragon tribe was coming aggressively. If Yu were to set up the formations himself, it would be too late. Therefore, He could only rely on the experts of the Soul Lost tribe to set up the formations. Although the formations that he taught the dark creatures were ordinary, the power that erupted when they were used was not to be underestimated. Especially when the army was fighting, the lethality was especially terrifying. It was precisely because of this that these arrays have been modified by Murong-Yu. If these arrays were brought back to the original world, they would be easily seen through and destroyed by those who were proficient in arrays. Otherwise, if these formations were leaked out, what would happen if the dark creatures used them against the cultivators in the original world? Although the experts of the Soul Lost tribe would definitely not leak it out, this was because they all knew how precious these formations were. If they used them well, they could use these formations to sweep across the dark world and eventually become one of the most powerful tribes in the dark world. They could even unify the dark creatures. Although the strong cultivators of the Morning Soul tribe all had such thoughts, what if they were killed by an even more powerful person and had their memories read? Therefore, it was better to be prepared. Murong-Yu still tampered with the formations. The Grand Marshal gave an order, and the entire Soul Lost tribe cooperated. The Soul Lost tribe cooperated with Murong-Yu even more. As long as Murong-Yu needed any materials, he could get them from the Soul Lost tribe. With everyone's cooperation, Murong-Yu's great formation was set up in less than a day. It was on the path that the 500 million strong army of the Poison Dragon tribe had to pass through. At that moment, the nearly 100 million strong army of the Soul Lost tribe had turned out in full strength. They were lying in ambush in or behind the formations. At that moment, the 500 million strong army of the Poison Dragon tribe was rolling over like a flood from afar. Before they arrived, waves of terrifying aura pressed over translation, causing the void to be filled with pressure. Looking at the army that was a few times more powerful than their own, the Soul Lost tribe, except for Murong-Yu, everyone in the Soul Lost tribe was nervous. Even the leader of the Soul Lost tribe had his hands were covered in cold sweat. Translation: Grand Marshal, are you sure that these arrays can exterminate the Poison Dragon's army of 500 million? Zhang Hun looked at Murong-Yu nervously. However, when translation, when Murong-Yu master translation, translation, as when at translation, the translation is that was then that, was that, there was Murong translation. Murong-Yu nodded. My lord, let's wait and see. Today, we will make Dulong's 500 million army unable to return. However, your majesty, I want 100 million crystal cores. Zhang Hun laughed. Although Zhang Hun, don't have a good reputation, I'm definitely a man of my word. Don't worry, as long as we can annihilate the Poison Dragon's 500 million army today, I'll give you all the crystal cores. Murong-Yu nodded and passed down the order. Wait for my order before making a move. Without my order, no one is to make a move. Otherwise, they will be beheaded. Everyone in the army felt a chill in their hearts. None of them dared to make a move. Otherwise, they would be beheaded by Murong-Yu. As a result, they could only look on helplessly as the Poison Dragon tribe's army of 500 million charged over. It was quite terrifying. That oppressive aura caused many warriors of the Morning Soul tribe to feel suffocated. However, everyone still strictly obeyed Murong-Yu's orders. They were not allowed to move, or they would be beheaded. It was overwhelming. There was simply no end in sight. Waves of dark power soared into the sky, causing the sky to darken as a result. He's in. They have all entered the formation. Seeing that the Poison Dragon tribe's army had already entered the formation, amidst the excitement and nervousness of the Morning Soul tribe, the Poison Dragon tribe's army didn't notice anything unusual and continued to advance. All of you come in. All of you come in. Seeing this scene, the Morning Soul tribe became excited. Each of them was shouting in their hearts. Amidst their expectant mood, the Poison Dragon tribe's army of 500 million quickly surged into the formation. All of them had entered the formation's range. However, the Morning Soul tribe's people still didn't make a move. Each of them looked at Murong-Yu and waited for Murong-Yu's orders. Activate the formation. Let the poison dragon tribes people stay behind, Murong-Yu shouted. Before Murong-Yu's voice fell, the formations were activated one by one. Rumble, all kinds of light soared into the sky. A formation erupted with terrifying power and instantly enveloped the entire area. Bang, bang, bang. Terrifying power erupted and continuously strangled the dark creatures. Instantly, the poison dragon tribe's dark creatures who weren't prepared at all screamed miserably and were strangled into pieces. In an instant, at least tens of millions of dark creatures were strangled. They had fallen into a trap. No matter how stupid the poison dragon tribe's dark creatures were, they had already realized that they had fallen into a trap. Therefore, one by one, they began to retreat. However, after entering the formation that Murong-Yu had meticulously set up, how could they leave so easily? The formations that Murong-Yu had set up were killing formations, trapping formations, and all kinds of illusion formations. Apart from these three types, there were no other formations. These three formations were intertwined and mixed together in an intricate manner. The power was quite terrifying. No matter how the poison dragon tribe's dark creatures charged left and right, they were trapped or fell into the illusion. They could only passively endure the attack of the killing formation. The Grand Marshal is really a god. Seeing that they didn't need to participate in the battle and the poison dragon tribe's dark creatures were dying in large numbers, the Morning Soul Tribe's people were incomparably excited. Each of them looked at Murong-Yu with admiration and reverence. The Morning Soul Tribe was even praising Murong-Yu. Murong-Yu looked ahead with an indifferent expression. There was no trace of emotion in his eyes. After all, these were dark creatures, although they were also a kind of life. If they didn't die, then it would be the life of the original world that died. The original world was Murong-Yu's hometown. His family and friends were there. He didn't want to see the people of the original world suffer. Therefore, Murong-Yu could only choose to let them die. Who asked both sides to be on opposite sides? Chapter 2368. All kinds of formations were activated. The Poison Dragon Tribe's army of 500 million could not break the formations at all. They could only brace themselves and endure the attacks of the formations. By the time they reacted and began to work together to fix the flaws, more than half of them were dead or injured. Almost 200 to 300 million dark creatures were killed. One could imagine how terrifying the power of the formations was. However, when the remaining 200 million soldiers began to gather to break the formations could not withstand a single blow. After all, the formations were killing formations and trapping formations. Moreover, they were set up by the Soul Lost Tribe's dark creatures. They were not very durable. Therefore, when the Poison Dragon Tribe began to break the formations by force, a large number of the formations began to be destroyed. However, the formations were so powerful. How could Murong-Yu allow them to destroy them wantonly? Therefore, he waved his hand and roared, "Attack! Annihilate the Poison Dragon Tribe! Leave no survivors!" Before Murong-Yu could finish his words, the Soul Lost Tribe's powerhouses led their respective armies and charged into the formations by force according to Murong-Yu's arrangement. It was because they were the ones who set up the formations. Murong-Yu also told them how to get in and out of the formations. Therefore, the people from the Soul Lost Tribe could see the Poison Dragon Tribe's dark creatures after entering the formations. However, the dark creatures did not sense anything. Attack! 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 The dark creatures of the Morning Soul Tribe unleashed their strongest attacks. At that moment, the people from the Poison Dragon Tribe were only breaking the formations. They did not know that the people from the Soul Lost Tribe had locked onto them. Therefore, when various attacks that contained destructive power came crashing down, the people from the Poison Dragon Tribe were dumbfounded. Suddenly, a large number of dark creatures died. Some were even blasted into dregs. By the time they reacted and launched a defense, their losses had exceeded 20%. 20% of 200 million was equivalent to 50 million dark creatures. That was only the first wave of attacks. At that moment, in the formations, the dark creatures from the Soul Lost tribe launched a frenzied attack by relying on the formations. As the Poison Dragon tribe could not attack them in the formations, they did not need to defend at all. They only needed to attack continuously. The attack of the array formation was even more terrifying. The magic array and the attacks from the Morning Souls tribe caused the Poison Dragon tribe to fall into a miserable state. They were like fish on a chopping board that was constantly being harvested. Every second, a large number of Poison Dragon tribe's dark creatures would die. On the other hand, the casualties of the Morning Souls tribe were almost incalculable. All of you attack. Kill those experts. At this moment, Muronyu ordered once more. Immediately, a group of top experts from the Morning Souls tribe charged into the formation. This team wasn't responsible for killing ordinary dark creatures. Their mission was to kill the top powerhouses of the Poison Dragon tribe. To catch bandits, first catch the ringleader. That was the logic. Once those powerful beings were killed, the rest of the dark creatures would naturally be in a state of panic. At that time, they would not be able to form an effective team. Sure enough, everything was as Muronyu expected. Under his various attacks, the Poison Dragon tribe was defeated. Unable to fight back at all, they were killed one after another. Grand Marshal, well done. Seeing the number of the Poison Dragon tribe's army dropping rapidly, while their losses were almost negligible, the tribe leader of the Morning Souls tribe, couldn't hide his admiration as he praised Muronyu continuously. Muronyu had a faint smile on his face from the beginning to the end. He was neither servile nor overbearing. After wiping out the Poison Dragon tribe's army of hundreds of millions, his prestige in the Morning Souls tribe had reached the peak. Even if it was still not as good as Morning Souls, it was almost there. If he led the Morning Souls tribe to wipe out the entire Poison Dragon tribe, his prestige in the Morning Souls tribe would definitely surpass Morning Souls tribe's leader. At that time, even if Muronyu wanted to be the leader of the Morning Souls tribe, there would probably be many people who would support him. Morning Souls tribe was a tribe that he had created himself. How could he just hand over the Morning Souls tribe to someone else? If that really happened, he would definitely kill Muronyu. Therefore, Muronyu definitely couldn't show any interest in the leader's position. Otherwise, it would easily arouse Morning Souls tribe's suspicion and they would kill him. However, his achievements and abilities couldn't be concealed. How could he make Morning Souls tribe believe that he wouldn't seize power? This was also a skill. Muronyu maintained a smile on his face as he said, "Everything is for the sake of Lord's goal of becoming a tyrant and even unifying the underworld." Ha ha, Morning Souls tribe laughed out loud. Obviously, he enjoyed Muronyu's words. At this moment, the battle was nearing its end. More than half of the various formations that Muronyu had set up were still intact. The remaining troops of the Poison Dragon tribe were only a few tens of millions. We surrender. We're willing to surrender. The army of 500 million was almost wiped out. The remaining people of the Poison Dragon tribe were scared out of their wits. They didn't want to die, so they chose to surrender. Surrender. Morning Souls tribe frowned slightly. Then, a cold, killing intent flashed in the depths of his eyes. It seemed that he didn't intend to accept their surrender. Before he could speak, Muronyu spoke first. "Leader, I think we should accept their surrender. Although they're all from the Poison Dragon tribe, they'll become our Morning Souls tribe after surrendering. Moreover, if our Morning Souls tribe wants to become one of the strongest tribes in the Dark World and even dominate the Dark World, we need more people to do it." Morning Souls tribe was startled. Then, he nodded slightly. "Let's do as the Grand Marshal said and accept their surrender. However, if they're not sincere in surrendering, kill them immediately." Therefore, about 60 million dark creatures of the Poison Dragon tribe surrendered. After this battle, although the Morning Souls tribe suffered some losses, it was almost negligible. Moreover, with the addition of 60 million dark creatures of the Poison Dragon tribe, the military strength of the Morning Souls tribe increased sharply. Although the 60 million troops couldn't immediately send them to the front line, As long as the Poison Dragon tribe was destroyed, they could only willingly become part of the Morning Souls tribe. In the end, none of the 500 million troops of the Poison Dragon tribe escaped. If those who surrendered were included, the Poison Dragon tribe's army would have been completely annihilated. If news of this were to spread out, it would probably alarm countless tribes in the surrounding area. This battle was also seen by the Morning Souls tribe, the Poison Dragon tribe, and other tribes. Sometimes, it wasn't useful to have more people in a war. Take Morong Yu's side, for example. They hadn't even made a move, but they had already annihilated more than 200 million troops of the Poison Dragon tribe. A person's wisdom and ability was equivalent to an army of hundreds of millions, or even more. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.